Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the longest day in Ways and Means you're probably ever going to see. So, everybody, put on your seatbelts and we're ready to go. So, with that, I think we can go ahead and begin. Oh my goodness, look at that Zoom screen. Let me get plugged in. With that, good morning. I will go ahead and call the committee meeting of Ways and Means to order. Staff, please call the roll.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Assemblyman Frierson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Here.
Assemblyman Haven.
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdigy.
Here.
Assemblyman Levitt.
Here.
Assemblywoman Miller.
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Here.
Assemblywoman Peters.
Here.
Assemblyman Roberts.
Here.
Assemblywoman Titus. Assemblywoman Tolles.
Here.
Assemblyman Watts.
Here.
Chair Carlton.
And I am here. So, just to give folks a little bit of the lay of the land of what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be a little, excuse me, a little all over the agenda because things have to move in a certain order. And we did receive 2 bills yesterday. So, just give everybody a heads up. We'll be starting with 487. Then we're going to go to 488. And those are both ABs. And then we'll be discussing SB 450. Then we'll get into the elections bills while we have the speaker in the room, which I believe are 126, 312, and 422. Those are all ABs also. 321, I apologize. Get a little dyslexic at the end of session. AB 321 and 422. So those are at the top of the batting order. That's just the first inning. So I'll let you know what the batting order is for the second inning. So with that, committee, I believe we can go ahead and begin. If I didn't call out your bills right now, and Mr. O'Neill, if you could wait in your office, we want to keep people where they kind of staged. When you're not going to be until a bit later, so no reason to be here. The less we have to use the overflow room, the better off we are, in case that room needs to be used. So if I didn't call you off, if you would please wait, and then I'll make sure to give you plenty of heads up to be back in the building, or back in the room, whatever you'd like to do. Okay, I think we've got everybody set. With that, I believe we can open up the hearing on AB 487. I'll go to Ms. Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. Assembly Bill 487 suspends certain required transfers from the State General Fund to the account to stabilize the operation of state government during the 2021 and 2023 biennium.
Right. So with that, Ms. Brown, good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Susan Brown. I serve as the Director of the Governor's Office of Finance. Before you today is Assembly Bill 487. This is a budget implementation bill that suspends the transfer of funds to the account to stabilize the operation of state government, also known as the Rainy Day Fund, for the 2021-2023 biennium. Statute requires that 1% of the total revenue that's projected by the Economic Forum in May of odd-numbered years, adjusted by any legislation enacted by the legislature that affects state revenue, be transferred each fiscal year. And this bill would transfer or would suspend that transfer for the upcoming biennium. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown. So committee members, questions of Ms. Brown on AB 487. Unfortunately, we have seen this bill a number of other times before. But we do what we got to do. Not seeing any questions from committee members. With that, we'll go ahead and, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just curious as to what the need is to suspend the transfer?
Susan Brown for the record. I believe the need for this is to fund the budget as has been approved through the money committees for the biennium, for the upcoming biennium rather.
And I wouldn't want to put Ms. Brown in a position of speaking for the legislature and the conversations that we've had. This is something that we need to do. We know there are dollars coming, but we also know that we have to fund government by May the 31st. So we can't pretend that money's going to be there. We
Right.
have to actually use real money that is available right now. And keeping in mind that on the regular rainy day fund, depending upon how money comes in, that money will automatically trip into our other rainy day fund. This is the other the
Okay.
version. So we're in a very unique position where we know the check's coming, but it's not here, so we can't write the check for anything else.
Thank you for the answer. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Mr. Roberts. Yeah, you don't spend money you don't have. Dr. Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry if I missed this, Ms. Brown. Do we know the number? How much money are we suspending?
I'll go to Ms.
Based on
Kaufman.
the Economic Forum,
I can go to
Susan
Ms.
Brown for the record.
Kaufman.
I have the numbers.
Okay,
here.
good. Go ahead then.
Based on the Economic Forum projections in May, that amount is approximately $43.4 million in fiscal year 22 and $46.4 million in fiscal year 23.
And thank you, follow up on that then, just so clarification, this would, if we suspend it now, it continues, obviously, it says through the biennium. Can we unsuspend it at any time if things look different?
It is a piece of legislation, Dr. Titus, and legislation is what it is until it gets changed.
Correct, but we wouldn't be able to unsuspend it until next session then, correct?
Well, you don't want to use the double S words in a regular session, but, stranger things have happened in my career.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Ms. Benitez Thompson, did you have a comment? No? Mm-mm. She says. Okay. So, with that, are there any other questions at this time? Not seeing any. This will be the hearing for Assembly Bill 487. So we'll open it up for input. Those in support in the room of AB 487 can come forward. Seeing no one in support, is there anyone in support on the phone line, please, Broadcast Services?
If you would like to testify in support on AB 487, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there's no one in the queue to testify in support at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcast Services. Those in opposition in the room? Seeing none. Opposition on the phone line, please.
If you would like to testify in opposition to AB 487, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there's no one to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. Anyone in neutral in the room, please? Nope. Broadcast Services neutral on the phone line?
If you would like to testify neutral on AB 487, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there is no one to testify in neutral on the line at this time.
Thank you very much. So with that, Ms. Brown, I don't believe there are any other comments that we would need to make. I will go ahead and close the hearing on AB 487, and committee members, you will see this bill very soon again. So with that, we can move on from there. The next bill would be 488. Ms. Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 488 relates to a lawsuit that the Supreme Court determined repealed the technology fee for the Department of Motor Vehicles. This bill reenacts and applies retroactively the $1 technology fee beginning June 30th, 2020, and expiring by limitation on June 30th, 2026.
With that, I have Mr. Sever. No PowerPoint today, I'm sure. So with that, if you would like to proceed, please.
Hello, Chair and committee members. No PowerPoint today, Chair. Sean Sever for the record, Deputy Administrator at the Nevada DMV. I just wanted to add that the extension of this fee will be important to help the DMV implement and upgrade the DMV's technology platform and fund its transformation process to move the majority of our services online in the next 4 years. During the pandemic, it became clear to us that this needed to be our #1 goal, as was the same with many other businesses in our state. We implemented online driver's license renewals last September, and more than 80,000 Nevadans have taken advantage of this service and avoided an in-person visit to a DMV office, which is a great example of what Nevadans want from the DMV. As such, the DMV is committed to radically changing its long-term service delivery model from an in-person brick-and-mortar services to an online storefront, similar to any online shopping experience you have today. We still will, of course, have offices open for those that prefer in-person transactions. So the department would like to receive funding from the technology fee to continue with this effort as a supplement to a direct appropriation from the highway fund. Thank you for your time, and we can answer any questions at this point.
Thank you very much. With that, committee members, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions. This bill deals with an issue where a divot has been created in the budget and tries to clear it up and address it moving forward. I'm trying to be as polite as I can. Are there any questions? Dr. Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, sir, for giving that information. I'm curious about the amount of monies expected from this over the until 2026.
Chair Sean Sever from the DMV. We'll have to get back to Ms. Titus on that question.
Is it in regard?
So I guess I just need some more understanding on the original amount, and then when it was extended in 2019, was it sunsetted to the same date, the 2026 date that this bill would be?
Sean Sever, DMV. No, it was not.
So this actually extended past the previous legislation?
Yes.
Sean Sever, DMV, correct.
Is that for purposes of reimbursement of the one that was overturned, or is it acknowledged that the fees are needed to actually fund the project?
This is Jude Heron, Deputy Director of DMV. It is actually meant to help us go forward with the transformation offset funds so that we don't have to request any highway funds or offset those costs. So it is a day forward going forward. It's not to replenish what was lost. Those funds in the tech fee right now, part of that will be used as a refund purpose because of the Supreme Court ruling. But going forward, this will allow us to offset highway funds going forward with the transformation project.
Follow up on that, Madam Chair. So just to clarify a term that our chair used, to the debit that was created. So this is not about that. This is about continuing payment forward.
Jude Heron for the record. This is continuing to collect the technology fee to help us to modernize our systems going forward to 2026.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question.
Thank you. And Okay. All right. So with that, other questions from other committee members at this time? Mr. Haven?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gentlemen, you mentioned the transformation project that this fund or this new fee will be used for. Do you know how much the transformation project will ultimately cost?
Jude Heron for the record, Deputy Director, DMV. I believe it's 110 million. 4-year period.
Okay. Go ahead. Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, this is Jude Heron, Deputy Director of DMV. I was just, my apologies in regards to the answer to Ms. Titus. I was corrected that this is retroactively correcting fiscal year 21. So I apologize for that. I read it incorrectly and I didn't have the information in front of me. So my apologies to that.
And that's okay. I was going to clear that up at the end because if you look, it's very plainly written, Section 1, 7.3.
Yes.
We're not trying to hide anything. We're plainly saying that these dollars need to come back in the example of, we won't go down that road right now.
You are correct. You are correct. My apologies.
So this does go back retroactively to June 30th of 2020 to make sure that those technology fees are collected, to make sure that these projects are completed. It's important that those dollars are there to get this project done. And most people in this building, a lot of the complaints we get are about DMV. Not it's about you guys, but it's just the public. And this is one of the things that will help DMV do their job so we don't get those complaints about DMV. So, Dr. Titus, go
Madam
ahead.
Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for that follow-up. Thank you for that clarification. So how much of this then, what will it cost to reimburse that $1 fee?
Jude Heron for the record, Deputy Director. At this point in time, we're working with the Treasurer's Office and Controller's Office on many options to do this, or credit refunds and so forth. So at this point in time, we don't have that information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Kaufman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did receive an approximate estimate, which was approximately $5.5 million.
And this could be possibly one of those instances, as we discovered, where we've done other refunds that it more than likely will cost us more to refund the money than the actual refund itself. So, in order to be able to not spend extra dollars that don't need to be spent, that could go to other valuable services, this is a way to address that issue moving forward. Ms. Tolles.
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate that last statement. I do wonder, since it's so potentially costly to go through that process of reimbursing, has the DMV ever looked at maybe just doing it through the system in a credit process instead moving forward, and what that would take to implement that process, and if there would be any costs involved?
I'm not gonna let them go there because the programming involved and the investigations that we have done could cost even more than the actual refund itself. So you're basically putting the refund on steroids by trying to do all the programming, which would slow it down even longer because we'd have to hire programmers to do it, and it could take a long time to get it done. So don't ever go down the programming road with DMV because it is a very long, twisty, dark, scary road. Okay, I'm just putting it out there. It's that time of year where we just got to lay everything on the table. Nothing against you guys.
Thank
We
you.
understand.
Thank you, Chair. I'd have to create a PowerPoint for that, so just kidding.
Thank you very much. It's always good to have a sense of humor. That won't be happening this evening, I'm sure. So.
Thank you, Chair.
And
I will
not
defer
seeing
to the
any
wisdom
other
of the chair.
questions. Thank you. Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know you're unable to estimate, what this will bring in over the 6-year period, but what did it bring in from June 2020, or whenever it was first enacted until it was repealed by the Supreme Court? What did it bring in then?
Jude Heron for the record. I've got one of our analysts actually going to get that information for you right now. So if I can delay that answer, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Perhaps Ms. Kaufman has it?
Madam Chair, the amounts were $6.7 million for fiscal year 2022 and $6.9 million for fiscal year 2023.
Thank you.
Thank you. So over a 6-year period, you're looking at, what, 72 to $75 million. Your project is 110. Where do you attempt to get the additional funds? You come back for an appropriation? All
Jude Heron for the record. That is correct, sir.
right, thank you.
All right, committee members, any other questions at this time? Not seeing any other questions, we'll go ahead and go into the support, opposition, and neutral testimony on the bill. So with that, is there anyone in the room in support of AB 488? Not seeing anyone come forward. Is there anyone on the phone line in support of AB 488?
If you would like to testify in support on AB 488, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 505, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and you may begin. Caller 505, please press star 6 to unmute. Caller 505, please press star 6 to unmute. Chair Carlton, I'm not sure what the issue is, but they are the only caller in support at this time.
All right, if they cannot get through and they're listening, please just send an email in support to the committee, and we will be sure to attach it to the record on the bill today. And I apologize if there's a technical difficulty. And but we do need to move on. So with that, is there anyone in opposition of the bill in the room? Good morning, Senators. Welcome to the People's House.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. James Settlemeyer, Senator District 17. I know you're absolutely shocked that I'm opposed to AB 488, especially Section 17.3. I've been in discussion with the DMV on possible solutions to the problem. Everything stemming from the concept of sending about a check, which would be actually the worst decision, because that potentially would cost $30 a check. There's other solutions looking at reprogramming. There was a third discussion I had with the DMV, simply just changing the system rather than saying charging $1 for a period of a year, just going in and changing the system to say -$1 to create that credit. That, as they indicated to me, would not cost much money at all. It would cost the same amount of money as they were ordered to do by the court to go in and turn off the system. In that respect, I feel that there is an opportunity to work in a bipartisan way to find a solution to this problem in order to refund the money that the district court on October 7th indicated had to be refunded. That meant that the tax that expired in June had only been in place for about 4 months. However, the Legislative Commission made the decision to appeal that decision, taking it to its finality as the Supreme Court just a couple weeks ago on the 13th of this month, thus putting it to 11 months that fund was collected. And as the Supreme Court, appropriately indicated, certifying what the district court stated, that based on the foregoing, the district court correctly found in favor of the relief and indicated to enforce what the district court said, which is to immediately enjoin and restrain from collecting those unconstitutional fees, and that all fee payers and taxpayers from such taxes have already been collected are entitled to an immediate refund. Judgment has been entered by the district court in favor of the plaintiffs in the 2/3 case, and in particular, the judgment in favor of the taxpayers and the fee payers. And that judgment has been upheld by the Nevada Supreme Court. And we have a duty, in my opinion, to refund that money. And I don't want to belabor this point, and I'm tired of litigation. The people deserve their money back. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. For the record, my name is Keith Pickard. I represent Senate District 20 in Henderson and Southern Nevada, and I come to the committee in opposition to Assembly Bill 488. On October 7th, 2020, the First Judicial District Court of the State of Nevada in and for Carson City entered its order after hearing on September 21st, 2020. The court ordered as follows: that it is hereby further ordered that Defendant Nevada Department of Motor Vehicles and Defendant Nevada Department of Taxation are immediately enjoined and restrained from collecting and enforcing the unconstitutional fees and taxes enacted by SB 542 and Sections 2, 3, 37, and 39 of SB 551, respectively, and that all fee payers and taxpayers from whom such fees and taxes have already been collected are entitled to an immediate refund thereof with interest at the legal rate of interest from the date collected. The 2020 Legislative Commission decided to appeal the First District Court decision to the Nevada Supreme Court. On May 3rd, the Nevada Supreme Court of this year, the Nevada Supreme Court heard oral argument in that decision. Just 10 days later, a unanimous Supreme Court affirmed every whit of the lower court's decision, rejecting the same arguments that have been made in support of this bill today. The Supreme Court restated what is universally viewed as the first principle of jurisprudence in the United States, the Declaration of Marbury versus Madison in 1803, that it is emphatically the province and duty of the Judicial Department to say what the law is. Indeed, the court rejected LCB counsel's contention that the court owed any deference to the Legislative Council's interpretation, since the constitutional language was plain and unambiguous. Let's be clear, Republicans did not create this problem, but a few law-trained individuals in the Senate majority did last session. The cases cited in the legislative...
Mr. Pickard, you can cite the case, but you will not make this personal. We will not bring up other legislators in this building. That is not the decorum and that befits this institution. Thank you.
Very well. The cases cited in the Legislative Council Digest of AB 488 do not involve private rights of parties which have vested by a court judgment, nor do they disturb vested rights at all. Retroactive laws which divest vested rights, deprive citizens of property without due process of law, or interfere with the judiciary by negating a judgment already granted are manifestly unconstitutional, similar to ex post facto laws and laws which impair obligations and contracts. Indeed, the U.S. Supreme Court held in Hodges v. Snyder, one of the cases relied on in the digest, it held that the private rights of parties which have been vested by the judgment of a court cannot be taken away by subsequent legislation, but must thereafter be enforced by the court regardless of such legislation. Thus, the legislature lacks the authority to instruct the executive branch to disobey the court's orders. NRS 22.010 defines acts constituting contempt of court. Specifically, the statute declares disobedience or resistance to any lawful writ, order, rule, or process issued by the court as an act of contempt. AB 488 is clearly an act of willful disobedience to a lawful order should this body decide to pass it. I implore this body to put this bill in the drawer and leave it there. Let's avoid another constitutional crisis. We cannot properly authorize what the court's order expressly disallows. Although as a successful plaintiff in the lawsuit and as a successful respondent in the appeal, I and my fellow plaintiffs will have standing to bring a motion for an order to show cause why those who refuse to obey.
Mr. Pickard, your 2 minutes has been well extended, so
Very well, I'll
please,
finish.
please close up.
I
I
will.
just heard a threat of a lawsuit in there, so I think it's time for us to stop.
Not at all. In fact, my point, Madam Chair, is I urge this body to take the better path and reject AB 488 and return to the citizens of Nevada what was illegally taken from them. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, Senators. I appreciate your input and your opposition, but this committee has to weigh all facets. If it's a $5 million refund and it's going to cost us $8 million to give it back, and that impacts other services in the state, I believe it is our responsibility to weigh those as we move forward and make the best decision that we need to make for the people of the state. Thank you. You're welcome at the People's House. See you later. Thanks a lot. No questions. So with that, is there any other opposition in the room? If not, can I have opposition on the phone line, please?
If you would like to testify in opposition to AB 488, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. Do we have folks in neutral in the room? Not seeing any. Neutral on the phone line, please.
If you would like to testify in neutral on AB 488, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there is no one to testify in neutral on AB 488.
Thank you very much. I don't believe any closing comments need to be made on this particular piece of legislation. So we'll close the hearing on AB 488. Thank you very much. With that, I believe the next on our agenda is SB 450. Good morning. Welcome to the committee. Please proceed.
And good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. It is good to be here with you this morning. For the record, my name is Nicole Canizaro, and I represent Senate District 6, which is located in the northwest portion of the Las Vegas Valley. Thank you for the opportunity today to present to you Senate Bill 450, which addresses funding for schools. The genesis of this bill goes all the way back to 1997, when the legislature allowed school districts to ask for voter approval to issue bonds over a 10-year period, providing certain conditions were met. As this rollover bond authority started to expire, the legislature granted an extension in 2015, allowing the school districts to issue general obligation bonds for an additional period of 10 years without voter approval, subject, of course, to certain findings. That brings us to 2021 and Senate Bill 450. This bill simply grants school districts the authority to issue general obligation bonds for a second additional 10-year period under the same conditions set forth in NRS 350.0201 for the 2015 extension. As with the prior legislation, Senate Bill 450 allows the school districts to use excess revenues from the existing tax rate to fund pay-as-you-go capital improvement projects, including remodeling and other needed facility improvements. This bill ensures that the debt service and reserve funds are not impacted. Since the school districts had bonds approved at different times, they are not on the same schedule. But Clark County School District is coming to the end of its 2015 extension and has a list of much-needed projects ready to go. I should point out that these rollover bonds must be reviewed by the oversight panels for school facilities, which were set up by the legislature in 1997 and continue to serve an important oversight function in Clark and Washoe counties. In addition, rollover bonds are required to be reviewed and approved by the Debt Management Commission in each county. As we know, our school districts have an ongoing and uphill battle to keep their buildings and facilities up to date and in good repair. Anything that we can do to help fund these needed projects without increasing the tax rate is a smart move. Also, this measure ensures that our students and staff members are studying and working in buildings that are safe. Madam Chair, that does conclude my very brief introductory remarks. I do have some individuals here with me who I would like to turn the testimony over. I also wanted to extend my deepest appreciation to Speaker Frierson, to Chair Carlton, and Majority Leader Benitez Thompson, plus so many more who have signed on as co-sponsors of this measure, because I do think that it is an important measure to go forward to ensure that we can continue having up-to-date school facilities. With your approval, Madam Chair, I would like to turn the microphone over to Brad Keating from the Clark County School District. We also have Lindsay Anderson of the Washoe County School District and Mary Przinski representing the Rural County School Districts. I, of course, urge this committee's support, and we are happy to answer any questions that you or the committee may have. We also have technical experts from Clark and Washoe County available via Zoom for questions that may come up, as well as Jeremy Aguero of Applied Analysis, who can also provide answers to any questions on the school bonds and the facilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I know you probably have to get back to the second floor. So if there are any questions for the senator, let's do those at this time so that she can get back to do the things she needs to do. Dr. Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this forward and supporting our schools. I don't know if this question is for you or legal, but I'm curious, since we're raising revenue by extending bonds, why is this not a 2/3 vote?
I'm not going to let you go there. In 2015, when this was passed, it was not passed with a 2/3 note. It does not have the 2/3 notation because of its previous history and inconsistency. That is the reason why it does not have the 2/3 notation at this time. Any other questions for the senator at this time? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Majority Leader. We appreciate you being here this morning. We'll see you again later when we come visit the second floor. All right, so with that, Mr. Keating, you're the next batter up.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of Assembly Ways and Means. Brad Keating, for the record, representing the Clark County School District. As I know the agenda is busy this morning, I will not go through my prepared remarks fully. I will give some highlights of some important points. SB 450 is important for one simple reason. Our schools are aging, and many remain overcrowded. The district has more than $10.8 billion of identified near-term school construction project needs. Further, 64% of schools in CCSD are a minimum of 20 years old. Over 41% of those schools have reached or exceeded 100% school capacity. These needs will compound in the coming years, and nearly 100 schools between 10 and 19 years will need predictable but significant capital improvement in the next 10 years. As the Majority Leader spoke about, we will work closely through our Board of School Trustees and our Bond Oversight Council in moving these projects forward. We've provided a list of proposed projects to you through the exhibits. One thing we will look at that's important to us is the available seats moving forward. The few available seats we have are not located in areas where dense student population and growth exists. Moreover, CCSD currently has 2,456 portable classrooms. The useful life of a portable classroom is 20 years old. We currently have 651 portables that are over 20 years old and 30 portables that were built before 1969. So your help in moving this bill forward will help us remove those portables. Modernization and rehabilitation of existing schools is incredibly important to us. Not only doing major modernization of older schools, specialized programs to provide equity for all schools, such as science labs, making sure every school has those, improve security for our schools, and addressing infrastructure limitations and technology upgrades. The central purpose of this bill is to ensure that our teachers have a safe and effective environment to teach and that our students have a safe and effective environment to learn. That being said, SB 450 is also a jobs bill. Extension of the bond rollover will free up approximately $2.9 billion in additional resources in Clark County directly and indirectly, support 24,000 person years of employment, and generate $1.3 billion in wages and salaries for Nevada's workers. So for those reasons and many more, which we're happy to discuss with you as we have the technical experts on the line, we urge your support of Senate Bill 450. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Lindsay Anderson on behalf of the Washoe County School District. The Washoe County School District's journey to properly address school construction needs has been long and winding. Although maybe not as bad as the DMV programming road, but long and winding nevertheless. Prior to 2016, and unlike other school districts across the state, our only source of funding for school construction was this rollover bond revenue. A failed attempt to increase revenue for school construction funds in 2013 led to legislation sponsored by Senator Debbie Smith in 2015 to allow community stakeholders to craft a ballot question and allow the voters to decide on additional revenue stream for this purpose. Through the work of the Public Schools Overcrowding and Repair Needs Committee and then the Save Our Schools Initiative, WC1 in 2016 was approved by voters to increase sales tax in Washoe County to fund additional school construction projects. This sales tax, along with the property tax rate, have become a comprehensive combination of funds that support a robust capital program averaging over $100 million in annual local investments. That is addressing both new construction as well as refurbishing our existing aging schools. As you may know, schools in Washoe County are old, with the average age of our schools over 43 years. These aging systems need to be repaired and replaced to ensure an adequate learning environment. As we build new schools, keeping our older schools on a level playing field is important to fulfill our commitment to equity and access for our students. Currently, the rollover bond proceeds pay for approximately half of our funds to school modernization and revitalization projects. Losing access to these funds would significantly impact our ability to keep up with these projects. Our current 10-year projection for school CIP totals more than $1 billion, compounded by the fact that current construction escalation costs are alarming and risk negatively impacting our ability to complete these projects with the current available revenue. Loss of this property tax stream would decimate our ability to meet the needs of our rapidly growing community. Examples of our projects include $50 million a year of district-wide renewal projects such as roofing, HVAC, and other existing equipment replacements, new schools primarily in the areas of enrollment growth of North Valleys and Spanish Springs, and major expansions and renovations to existing schools like Billinghurst, Mendive, and Shaw Middle School. Our school construction program has a tremendous amount of oversight between our Capital Funding Protection Committee, Oversight Panel on School Facilities, and the Board of Trustees. Our amazing capital projects team has a proven track record of delivering projects in full compliance with Nevada law and to our educational specifications on time and on budget. We ask that this committee acknowledge this track record and the clear need to continue investing in school construction so the current kindergartners, the class of 2032, can be assured a school facility to meet their needs. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Brzezinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Good morning, and for the record, my name is Mary Brzezinski. I represent the Nevada Association of School Superintendents, but this morning I'm addressing the needs of the rural districts. You've heard about Washoe and Clark and their needs, and in the rural districts there is a great need as well to continue this rollover bond. Carson City, Churchill, Douglas, Humboldt, Lyon, Mineral, Nye, Pershing, Story, and White Pine will all benefit from this piece of legislation. And rural districts use the money for routine maintenance on their buildings, just as you have heard from Clark and Washoe. But let me give you some examples of the need in the rural areas. For example, in White Pine County School District, the oldest continuously operating school in the state is located there. David Norman Elementary was built in 1909, and it has been a school for 112 years. Another school in the county has been continuously operating since 1909. It's White Pine Middle School. It was built in 1913. and it's been housing students for 108 years. You can imagine the work that needs to be done on schools like this to keep them up. And they're in constant need of repair and modernization, especially with all the new technology. Humboldt County School District also has a rollover bond. Their average age of their buildings is 59 years, and their superintendent reports that their rollover is critical for their building maintenance. Pershing, Churchill, Carson City all use this money to maintain their buildings, which, as you have heard, they're getting old, and there's just needs to be a lot of infrastructure for the technology that these schools need, as well as just keeping the roofs repaired. So we're in full support of this bond bill, and we hope that you can support our rural school districts as well. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I believe Ms. Tolles has a question, so we'll go ahead and do that right now.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you. While I have you both at the table, I know that we've worked for many years on this capital funding issue, and I know that one of the frustrations has been that it's confusing for the public, oftentimes because we have to keep coming back every 10 years or so and just asking them, are you sure we can still do this process? Are you sure we can still use this money? And then for, your average voter, they're confused because they're thinking, is this new money? Are they always coming back and asking for more money and more money? And it's actually just reauthorizing that same process by which we fund our schools. And so could you just help us understand as a committee that this solves that problem, and that it's not a new process or a new fee. It's just helping to reduce that confusion for the public that we just keep asking for a reauthorization for the same process.
Madam Chair, Lindsay Anderson for the Washoe County School District, through you to Assemblywoman Tolles. I think you articulated it well. And just also a reminder, school districts cannot run their own ballot questions. And so a separate sort of community-based committee is required to come together, fund a ballot question campaign to do exactly what you just articulated, ask for continued permission of the same amount of property tax. So I can confirm that this extension does not increase the property tax rate at all. It just allows districts to continue accessing that property tax rate going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, any other questions at this time? Not seeing any. Thank you, ladies, very much. Nice to see you. So with that, any other presenters on the bill? Not seeing any other presenters, we'll go ahead and take support, opposition, and neutral on SB 450. With that, those in support in the room, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Paige Barnes. I'm with Crowley and Fraudo Public Affairs, here today representing the Nevada Association of School Boards. SB 450 allows for a smooth continuation of current practice. Bonding authority is crucial to support all districts across our state, and most importantly, our students. As representatives of our communities and voters, we are here in strong support of SB 450 and encourage you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Muradkin.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Paul Muradkin with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is in support of SB 450. The Chamber was actually in support of the original extension in 2015 and the previous ballot measure in 1997. The Chamber does believe the school district in Clark County has done an excellent job of managing these dollars and have built quality education facilities. As you've also heard, this will allow other resources to be made available for other commitments in the school district by reallocating those dollars for this construction dollars. Thank you for your time today this morning.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Carlton and members of the committee. My name is Kanani Espinoza on behalf of the Nevada chapter of the American Council of Engineering Companies. ACEC supports SB 450 as it will create thousands of design and construction jobs and have an immediate impact on our economic recovery. On behalf of the design and engineering community, we support the bill and encourage your support as well. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ariel Edwards on behalf of the City of North Las Vegas. We are in support of Senate Bill 450 and believe that this will provide jobs and ensure the quality of educational facilities continues to be a priority for all students. We would like to thank the bill's sponsor for bringing this bill forward and urge its support and passage. Thank you so much for your time and consideration today.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Committee Chair Carlton and committee members. My name is Dr. Brenda Pearson, and I'm here representing the Clark County Education Association. We are here in strong support of Senate Bill 450. We want to mention the 2,500 portables that are currently on Clark County School District property, houses approximately 62,000 students, which is 20% of the total student population. Something to consider as this is moving forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Wachter?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means. My name is Brian Wachter, I'm the Senior Vice President of the Retail Association of Nevada. We are in favor of Senate Bill 450. When it comes to lowering class sizes, you can only do that by doing two things: building new schools and hiring more teachers. This helps on one of those, and so we urge your support.
Thank you. Anyone else in support in the room? Seeing none, those in support on Zoom, if you'd like to be recognized, let me just raise your hand. Mr. Warden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to you and to the members of the Ways and Means Committee. Tom Warden with Howard Hughes Corporation, and I'm in support of SB 450. On behalf of my role with Hughes Corp, we're the developer of the Summerlin Master Plan Community, but also on behalf of the Clark County School District's Partnership Council. Served on the council for more than 20 years, and during that time, I would say all of us on that council have really come to appreciate the pressing need for capital funding for refurbish and rebuild in many areas of the older schools in Southern Nevada. So the council has come to that insight through some of the programs that are offered by the Partnership Office, and I'm thinking of programs such as Focus School, in which a school that is high risk is matched with a business, and they come up with very unique solutions to improve education. Great program. So anyway, the need to fix schools, coupled with the need to construct new schools in our growing community, are the reasons we support SB 450. And we also agree with Mr. Keating on the jobs that would be created. Very impressive number of jobs, and I think it would be important to that ongoing economic recovery. So with that, thank you, Madam Chair, as well as thanks to Speaker Frierson and all the primary sponsors and co-sponsors of the bill. We appreciate you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. Is there anyone else in Zoom in support? Not seeing anyone else wishing to be recognized in support. We'll go ahead and go to the phone line, broadcast services. Do we have folks in support on the phone, please?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 450, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 505. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, my name is Peter Guzman. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. I am the president. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
I am Peter Guzman, president of the Latin Chamber of Commerce. SB 450 is a critical part of improving the quality of education for our students. Just take a quick drive through any part of East Las Vegas and you'll realize how much our schools are in need for modernization. We believe that, in fact, this Clark County School District has identified over $10 billion worth of much-needed construction projects. So this will not only help young kids in education, but it will also create jobs and in construction. Finally, although the primary driver of this legislation is to improve the quality for our kids, as it should be, we also believe, as I stated, that it will be a positive economic impact for our community. Lastly, I want to say, off script a little bit, these portables, kids deserve so much better than that. Portables are not classrooms. They were meant to be just for a moment in need, not permanent. Let's get our kids out of these portables and let's get them into brick and mortar so that they can have the best chance at life. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the phone line?
Caller with the last three digits, 666. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. For your record, Warren Hardy, WARREN HARDY, representing the Council for a Better Nevada. We're pleased to be here today in support of this bond rollover so that the school districts in our state can continue to provide for the education of our children. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Anyone else in support on the phone line?
Caller with the last three digits, 131. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Chair Carlton, members of the committee, this is Connor Kane, CONNORCAIN, on behalf of LVGEA, and we're also in support of Senate Bill 450. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in support on the phone line?
Caller with the last three digits, 653. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair Carlton and the committee, Ways and Means. This is Dora Martinez. I represent Nevada Disability Peer Action Coalition, and we ditto all of the prior callers. And I just want to add to the list of the young lady was saying regarding the other school. There is the Title I school, Sierra Crest, and many schools that need this update with their building. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Anyone else in support on the phone line, please?
Caller with the last three digits, 598. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This is Nicole Rourke, representing the city of Henderson. We are also here in favor of the issuance of general obligation bonds for the construction of new schools and maintenance and repair of existing schools through Senate Bill 450. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rourke. Next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits, 918. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Assembly Ways and Means Committee. My name is Jeff Horn, JEFFHORN, and I am the Deputy Executive Director with Clark County Association of School Administrators and Professional Technical Employees. Our organization represents approximately 1,300 Clark County School District administrators, of which 98% of those eligible to join our association are current members. We would like to voice our support for Senate Bill 450. As a former principal and school associate superintendent, I am well aware of the need to build, modernize, and replace schools and systems which are in constant need of repair. Each year, like clockwork, HVAC systems at schools fail in 100-degree-plus weather, sometimes forcing evacuation of students and staff. Older buildings that have served their lifespan are routinely unable to be repaired due to lack of available parts and equipment. Students, parents, and community members grow impatient as older, overcrowded, and inefficient buildings are serviced over and over again in hopes that permanent fixes are on their way. Senate Bill 450 will provide school board trustees the flexibility to approve bonds in order to rectify these deficiencies. This will allow students, staff, and administrators to work, learn, and play in a more stable and comfortable educational learning environment. New and improved facilities instill pride and a sense of ownership with members of school communities. Increased retention and recruitment of highly qualified staff is a byproduct of well-maintained, efficient, and modern buildings and systems. We ask for your support for Senate Bill 450 so that our communities can continue to keep pace with the growing needs of our school districts. Thank you, and I appreciate your consideration and time.
Thank you. And do we have another caller?
Caller with the last three digits, 469. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, committee. Andy Donahue with the Labor Employers Cooperation and Education Trust in support of a strong and direct bond rollover bill. We support this. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your brevity. Next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits, 210. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mary Nakashima, M-A-R-I, N is in Nevada, A-K, A-S-H-I-M-A, on behalf of the Washoe Principals and Administrators Association. We're calling in support of this measure, and we are grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
Caller with the last three digits, 397. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller 397, please press *6 to unmute.
Good morning, Chair Carlton and members of the committee. My name is Michelle Booth, M-I-C-H-E-L-L-E-B-O-O-T-H, representing Educate Nevada Now, and I'm calling in support of SB4 of this bill.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Next caller, please. Mr. Keating, did you use the phone book to line up support? Next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits, 114. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Greetings, Chair, members of the committee. Amber Stidham with the Henderson Chamber of Commerce. In the interest of time, I'll just say ditto. We support this measure.
Thank you very much. Next caller.
For those of you that have just joined the call, if you would like to testify in support on SB 450, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits, 401. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller 401, please press *6 to unmute.
My name is Meredith Freeman, speaking on behalf of Nevada PTA. We are in support of SB 450 as a needed measure to ensure students and staff have safe and modern schools in which to learn. As our state grows, it is essential that new schools can be built to address chronically overcrowded classrooms and make certain aging schools are repaired or replaced to provide the best possible education environment for all students. Every public school student in Nevada should have access to facilities that meet their needs to succeed. SB 450 provides districts with the ability to plan to address construction needs into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other callers?
For the callers that have just joined the call, please press *9 now to testify in support on SB 450. Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you very much. So with that, we'll go to opposition. Is there any opposition here in the room? Seeing none, we'll go to opposition on the phone line.
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 450, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there is no one to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. Neutral here in the room. Seeing no one come forward. Neutral on the phone line, please.
Chair, someone did raise their hand. I'm not sure if they're in opposition or in neutral. They did it in in the middle of that statement. Where would you just like me to call on them?
Just call on them and we'll go from there. We know there's a lag time.
10-4, thank you.
10-4. Okay.
Caller with the last three digits, 532. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, my name is Wendy Ellis, WendyEllis. I'd like to testify in opposition. I'm listening to this, and I'm hearing all of these people, oh, they care so much about the children. The kids haven't even been in the schools. I want to know where my property taxes went for the schools, which is a considerable amount. And you guys can spend money faster than anybody I've ever seen. Thank you.
Broadcast Services, anyone else in opposition?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 450, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. So we did ask for neutral in the room. We were going to neutral on the phone lines. Had to go back around the corner and come back at it. So neutral on the phone lines, please.
All right. If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 450, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you very much. So I don't believe any closing comments are really necessary. I think everybody in the phone book spoke for this fairly well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close the hearing on SB 450. This is an SB, therefore it has no deadlines with this committee right now. So when the time is appropriate, we will move this bill. We'll bring it back to the committee for conversation. So with that, we are done with SB 450. The next bills on our agenda in the batting order are the 3 election bills. And I believe that is Speaker Frierson's world. Good morning, Speaker.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jason Frierson, Assemblyman in District 8, Speaker of the Nevada State Assembly, and I am here to present AB 126, which would move Nevada to be the first state in the nation in a presidential nominating process and changes our current presidential nominating caucus system to a primary. I will note, and I provided early this morning an amendment that essentially strikes the changes that were in the original bill with respect to changing the filing deadlines and the filing dates, as that created some complications for our election officials. So the proposed amendment in that regard would eliminate Section 6.5 and also any conforming sections that were proposed to be changed as a result of Section 6.5. That change, however, does not have an impact on the fiscal note. As you can see, there is no fiscal note during the upcoming biennium for this bill because our next presidential primary will not be until 2024. And so we'll have time to plan for the associated costs and include them in the budget for the next biennium. I recognize that no legislature could tie the hands of a future legislature, so obviously the subsequent legislative session would have to address this, but for the purposes of this biennium, there is no impact on the state for this biennium. I will simply close by saying Nevada has consistently punched above our weight when it comes to elevating the issues we experience every day of national importance, from addressing racial justice, climate change, staunchly working to expand voting rights. Our voices are diverse and better reflect the rest of the country than the current nominating structure. And it's time for Nevada to take its rightful place, as I believe, not just in the West, but first in the nation, as a diverse state, a state with diverse issues, not just constituents, but diverse issues, and a state that's small enough and manageable enough for candidates to come here, not only for Nevada to get attention, but for candidates to be able to make their case before the kind of constituency that's going to ultimately elect our next president. And so with that, that concludes my remarks, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
And thank you, Speaker, very much for going through that. You were a little quick at the beginning. If you could repeat the sections that are going to be deleted for me to make sure that I have it correct in my notes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Jason Frierson for the record. It's essentially 6.5 is the section of substance that is proposed to be deleted. All of the other sections throughout the bill are conforming language, adjustment language, but it's the substantive section is 6.5.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I just wanted to make sure that I had heard you correctly. This time of the year, sometimes I've got to hear things twice.
And I've had a lot of coffee, so forgive me if I'm talking fast.
You're ahead of me, let me tell you. So with that, committee members, open it up for questions of the Speaker at this time. Dr. Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just for, again, maybe I haven't had as much coffee as you have this morning, but I'm looking at the bill and I don't see a 6.5. So I see a 6, section 6, and then a 1, 2, 3, but I'm sorry, just want to catch up. Okay. All my friends here on this side of the dais has pointed out to me that it's on page 7. So, all right, I'm catching up here. Thank you, sir.
So with that, committee members, any other questions at this time? Ms. Tolles.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm just curious if we could walk through, there's just maybe I'm missing something, but I'm looking at the fiscal notes and they just seem to be, some are 0, some are 5.2 million. Are we going to walk through that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, for the record, Jason Frierson. I don't want to oversimplify the issue, but there's not a presidential primary during this biennium. And so the costs associated with the policy change would be in a subsequent biennium, particularly with respect to the state.
Thank you.
I do see a representative from the Secretary of State's office as well as a Clark County registrar. So if they have a different perspective, that's certainly their prerogative, but there's no presidential primary this biennium.
Yep, thank you. And I heard you say that in your opening remarks, which is why I'm sort of scratching my head a little bit. So maybe if we could get that clarification, that would be helpful.
Not to preempt them, but I frequently scratch my head about some of the fiscal notes that are submitted. And so I would submit, we're probably going to talk about some of those today as well.
Thank you. Okay. So with that, we can go to the Secretary of State's office. If you'd like to have a brief response, and then I'll go to Mr. Gloria if needed. So, Secretary of State's office.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Chair Carlton and members of the committee. Mark Washington, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. The Office of the Secretary of State is opposed to this bill due to the negative fiscal impact it will have on the state. If AB 126 is passed, the Office of the Secretary of State would reimburse county expenses due to the provisions in Section 49 stating that the cost of a presidential preference primary election is a charge against the state and must be paid for from the reserve statutory contingency account. Additionally, NAC 293.200 requires the Secretary of State to reimburse the counties for the cost of basic stock for ballots. If passed, the total estimated fiscal impact has been identified at approximately $5.2 million for each additional presidential preference primary election, which would occur, as the Speaker mentioned, only once every 4 years and not until the next biennium. We have broken down these costs, though, that we assess into 3 categories. The first was calculated based on cost estimates gathered from each of the 17 counties. It includes the anticipated cost of ballot stock and other costs that the counties would likely ask for reimbursement. Ultimately, though, and based on Section 49 of the bill, the Secretary of State would recommend to the Board of Examiners exactly what those costs to the state would be. The second cost focused on voter outreach and education. This would be an important part of our statewide effort to clarify for voters how the new presidential preference primary would work, and would include details of the timeline and other provisions. Of note, our total marketing budget as an agency is only $900 per fiscal year, and none of that is in the elections budget. It's for commercial recordings whose rates speak for themselves, and need very little advertisement, hence the anticipated marketing costs associated with this bill. Finally, the third cost estimate focuses on an increase in temporary workers needed to address the increased volume of phone calls, emails, and other public inquiries that these additional elections would bring. This estimate is based on our temporary labor costs from the 2020 general election. Thank you for your time. I'm available for questions.
And yes, the question is, why would you submit a fiscal note on something that will not impact us in this biennium? This legislature, this committee deals with the budget for this biennium only. Why would you submit a fiscal note on something that will not impact your office within the next 2 years? There'll be another legislative session where this fiscal note would be much more appropriate.
Yes, ma'am. Mark Lawson for the record. We were asked to provide information on the fiscal assessment. Well, we looked closely if there were going to be changes, and we wanted to identify that, at least in this biennium, for your decision making, that there is a zero impact to the state. So while there are costs associated with future biennia, it was important for us to identify that, at least right now, it is zero, but there will be something later on down the line.
Thank you. We appreciate that. I'm really glad other agencies don't do that. We would never get done in 120 days. So with that, committee members, any other questions? Ms. Tolles, did you have a follow-up?
Just a follow-up comment that I appreciate the amount of education that Secretary of State's office keeps referring to, and we'll be hearing other bills on civics education, and I think that it just speaks to the importance of civics education in our state. All right, with that, I don't see any other questions. Mr. Roberts?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and this would be for the Secretary of State's office. I understand that this budget cycle, it doesn't have a physical impact, and his fiscal note was based off of the future. Just curious, if you moved everything to one primary, what would the impact be then? Like if you moved all the primaries or aligned all the primaries, would that have a fiscal impact?
Thank you for the question, Mark Voloshin for the record. Yes, sir, absolutely. That would have an impact, but it would be significantly lower because, as you mentioned, if we lined up the primaries with the other existing elections, those costs are already accounted for. The counties, the state have already identified those fiscal impacts to the state. This would just simply be a modification of the ballot with minor adjustments otherwise, and not the establishment of a brand new election as this bill implies.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Mr. Roberts. Any other questions from committee members at this time?
Madam Chair, if I may make a note with respect to Assemblyman Roberts' question, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that while it might not have as great of an impact on the state, it would certainly have an impact on local government who has to implement it. And that is the reason why I propose to take it out. It's because of that impact by the people who actually have to implement it in conversations both with our local elected officials and with the courts, that it would create problems outside of our state budget that outweighed, I think, the benefits as we had originally contemplated.
Majority Leader.
Thank you so much. I really think this is really exciting, and I don't want it to be lost through all of this. I'm not offended by the fiscal note because I think this is the direction we should go in and fund it to make it right, and that'll be a future legislature's issue with it. But I'm affectionately attached to our caucus system, but also know that it's time to evolve and move on. And to think that we could be having this kind of conversation, I think is really a privilege because it talks so much about, I think, the landscape of Nevadans and how much Nevadans have engaged in this process. I will mourn having to give up, spending time at the, volunteering for caucuses days on end for this process, but that's okay because we will get a better process. And I think what we saw from some of the other changes that we made, good changes we made in our election laws, that if we make the process easier to engage in, people will engage. We have an electorate that cares. We have an electorate that wants to show up. And all we have to do is remove barriers, and they will engage in a way that our founders absolutely dreamed of. So I'm excited about this.
Other questions from other committee members at this time? Not seeing anything else. Mr. Speaker, did you have anyone else you wish to present anything at this time? If not, we'll move into the support opposition neutral portion of the bill. Good? Alrighty. So with that, this being the hearing on Assembly Bill 126, we'll go ahead and open it up for support here in the room.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. I am here today in support of Assembly Bill 126. We urge you to invest in this bill because it will make a more fair and equitable presidential primary process in Nevada. We believe we should be first in the nation, and that's worth the cost. Please support AB 126. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Magnus. Anyone else in the room here in support of Assembly Bill 126? Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Carlton, members of the committee. Priscilla Maloney for the AFSCME Retiree Chapter. We also are in support of this bill. There's way too many reasons for why that is, and so I'll just say ditto to what Ms. Magnus said.
Thank you very much, Ms. Maloney, for your brevity. We appreciate that. Anyone else
All day
in
long,
support?
Your Honor.
Not seeing anyone else in the room in support, we'll go to the phone lines. Support on the phone, please.
If you would like to testify in support on AB 126, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 201, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, the Chairwoman Carlton and committee members. For the record, my name is Emily Prasad Zamora. That's EMILYPERSAUD-ZAMORA. I'm the Executive Director of Silver State Voices here in support of AB 126. We believe that it's vital that we apportion the proper resources to ensuring that more Nevadans are able to participate in our presidential preference primary elections. We ask that you invest in our democracy by voting yes on AB 126. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Others in support on the phone line?
For those of you that just joined the call, if you would like to testify in support on AB 126, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the room in opposition to Assembly Bill 126? Not seeing anyone come forward. If we could go to the phone lines, anyone in opposition of 126?
If you would like to testify in opposition on AB 126, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 304, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, committee. My name is Jim DeGraffenreid, DeGraffenreid. I represent Nevada on the Republican National Committee, and the Nevada Republican Party is firmly in opposition to this bill. The fiscal note on this bill estimates the cost of a primary election at well over $5 million. Given the budget situation in Nevada, this is not a good use of state resources, particularly when our party has demonstrated the ability to hold a successful caucus with participation rivaling that of a primary election. We heard earlier today under AB 488 that there are other needs in Nevada. Taxpayers know what the legislature apparently does not, namely that government resources are not unlimited, and the job of the legislature is to prioritize limited resources to the most critical needs. This bill is not an important need for the state. Nevada is already first in the West, and it is not possible for us to become first in the nation. New Hampshire has a state law that says they must hold the first primary in the nation, and they will hold their primary as early as necessary to remain first. We have no ability to change the laws of the state of New Hampshire, and so this is a waste of our $5.5 million to chase that impossible goal. To address Assemblyman Roberts' question on holding the full primary election in February, that would resolve the fiscal issue, but it would come at the cost of starting our filing and election season at the end of the prior year, which would require our clerks and their staff to work on the election during the holidays. The bill creates an unacceptable risk to Democrats and Republicans in Nevada while wasting resources, and we respectfully urge this committee to not pass AB 126. Thank you.
Any other callers in opposition, please?
Caller with the last 3 digits, 373, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Bob Russo, and that is Bobrusso. I just found out about this bill yesterday, and I just want to say that I don't think it's a good bill. I think it's a waste of money, $5.5 million for another primary election. Let's just keep our caucuses and allow the political parties to determine how they will select their nominees for president. I'm sure we can, with the way the economy is going and could go in the future, I'm sure that that $5.5 million would be well served someplace else. So please oppose this bill. Thank you very much.
Next caller in opposition.
For those of you that have just joined the call, if you would like to testify in opposition to AB 126, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, if there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the room in neutral? Not seeing anyone come forward. Is there anyone on the phone lines in neutral?
If you would like to testify neutral on AB 126, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 069, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, this is actually for support. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Am I able to continue in support?
Please go ahead. That's fine. We understand.
Thank you very much. My name is Andre Wade, ANDREWADE, State Director for Silver State Equality. I just want to call in to say that we are in support of AB 126. Thank you.
And thank you very much. We appreciate that. Anyone else in neutral broadcast services?
Chair, there are no more callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you very much. Speaker Frierson, did you have any closing comments?
Thank you again, Madam Chair. For the record, Jason Frierson. I will only close by wanting to clarify because one caller indicated that they had just found out about this, that this isn't new, that we've had a substantive hearing, that this has been certainly at the very least, I don't remember the date of the initial hearing, but weeks in the making. And so I wanted to make sure that there was no misconception about whether or not this has already been out there. It has and has already had a substantive hearing. But with that, I would thank the committee for their time and attention.
And thank you, Speaker. I see the date on the front of both bills in February, so that just tells you. All right, so with that, we can go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 126. And I believe, Speaker, the next bill is 321.
May I proceed, Madam Chair?
Please. I was just pulling out my documents.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, for the record, Jason Frierson, Assemblyman for District 8, Speaker of the Nevada State Assembly. I thank you for your time and consideration of Assembly Bill 321, which continues what we accomplished with AB 4 that was passed during the 32nd special session. We have worked with county election officials and the Secretary of State's office to build upon the success of AB 4 and the male primary election that the Secretary of State ran to develop a system that continues to expand freedoms of Nevadans to vote. Briefly, AB 321 provides for mail-in ballots for all elections while strengthening election processes and aligning other election-related deadlines and requirements. Again, Madam Chair, we have already had a substantive hearing, so I will address the fiscal note of the reason why we're here today. I would note that the Secretary of State's office has submitted a fiscal note of approximately $5.7 million per year. However, that is not consistent with what the Governor's Finance Office reports as having been what was reimbursed in the previous election cycle. That was approximately $3 million in 2020 with $900,000 that was not reimbursed. And so what you're looking at is what was reflected in 2020 as $3.9 million and what is reflected in the fiscal note moving forward, which is $5.7 million by the Secretary of State's office, which simply doesn't necessarily reflect the reality of past presidential election cycle versus a non-presidential upcoming, where the turnout that would be lower and I think that it would be up to the Secretary of State's office to address why it would be so much more this upcoming election cycle than it would be than it was in the most recent election cycle. Recognizing also that when we open up these issues, I think there's a tendency for folks to look for the ideal and say, well, since we're opening up anyway, let's find an ideal way to do all of this, which is not always necessary or practical. And so with that, I just want to make sure that there's an opportunity to make clear what's different from next election cycle that we didn't experience this past election cycle.
And thank you, Speaker. So I'm going to ask you to repeat that again because it went by So we have a current fiscal note from the Secretary of State's office, but we have confirmed the previous expenses through the GFO, and that was $3.9 million, $3 million of it which was reimbursed, $900,000 which was not reimbursed. So there seems to be a delta between what we actually spent last time and what they're prospectively thinking we are going to spend next time, even though it's a midterm and it tends to be a little bit of a different situation in a midterm.
You stated that much more concise and slower, and I appreciate it, Madam Chair.
I got your back, Speaker. So with that, now I just want to make sure we have a really clear record about how this is going. So I'll open it up to the Secretary of State's office to give us their viewpoint on the difference in the delta between those two numbers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark Washington, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections for the record. I'll start by addressing the Speaker's concerns. First of all, he mentioned and commented on the fact that the turnout would be lower, but I think perhaps maybe then I'm missing something. AB 321 proposes to send a mail ballot to every active registered voter, period. So turnout really doesn't affect the midterm any more than it would a general election, as every one of the 1.8 million active registered voters that we have would be receiving that ballot. Those costs that I identified were in reference to that. The fact that, again, 1.8 million ballots would be printed and mailed to those individuals across the state, regardless of their turnout. We certainly would try to increase turnout to make the expenditure to pay for those ballots more worthwhile, so to speak. But turnout really, as it relates to 321, doesn't necessarily have an impact. Our bill.
So if I could stop you right there,
Yes,
just to
ma'am.
make sure that we're clear, because I want this to be crystal clear. So you're saying that there really wouldn't be a difference between the cost of last election and the cost of this next election because you would mail ballots to everyone anyway. So that leads to my next question. If it was 3.9 last time, why is there an increased number this time with your statement that this would be the same?
Two reasons. One, increase in ballot drop boxes. We used 121 we identified 121 ballot drop boxes in our initial fiscal note. That number would more realistically go over 221. And again, an estimate of about $1,500 each to purchase and not even to install. And then two, fact of the matter is, again, we did not reimburse the counties for quite a bit of money that they spent on this last election cycle. Case in point, Clark County specifically, for their ballot stock, historically have spent around between $7,000 and $40,000. 2020 general election, they spent $778,000. We only compensated them for $11,000 based on our historic, what we provided in the past. Costs like those are the ones that we identified and put into our fiscal bill that got it to the numbers that we have currently.
And if I could ask, why did you not reimburse those costs? And would that be the same in the future? Is that a policy that runs through, or would you consider reimbursing Clark County in the future?
Mark Washington, for the record, thank you for the question, Chair Carlton. Did not reimburse them in part because CARES Act, AB4 money, there were other means for them to get funding for those bills. As I understand it, again, to clarify, that occurred and that those discussions were had prior to my assumption of this role. But I can look into it and I'll get you some more information if there's something different.
And we just want to make a complete record because we know the last election cycle was very unique and a lot of work was put in to make sure that the folks in the state could vote no matter what they were facing at that time. So being able to compare it to that is good in some ways, but not necessarily the truest form of measure because it was we were all in a different moment in time. So thank you for elaborating on that, and those of us from Clark County always want to know what the impacts to Clark County would be. So are there any other comments from the Secretary of State's office at this time?
Madam Chair, with your permission, I do have a brief statement about our fiscal note to provide additional context, if I may.
That would be fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Mark Voloshin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. The Office of the Secretary of State is opposed to this bill due to the negative impact that it will have on the state.
If you're going to go into opposition, I'm going to have to ask you to wait. This was more for informational purposes in a presentation mode of the bill. If you're in opposition, I'll take you when we get to the opposition. So thank you very much. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah, we just want to make sure the record is clear and everybody's in the right category when we need them to be. So with that, committee members, are there any questions of the Secretary of State at this time? I don't see any as far as providing information. Ms. Tolles, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And so just to wrap my head around the process, right, of and the costs involved. So we have the costs of the card stock, the postage going out, and then postage coming back, correct? So if for some reason that was rejected, we incur the cost for that postage of those ballots being returned. And then we have also the back end processing where we have our election officials and workers, facilities for space to have to go through processing all those mail-in ballots. Am I capturing all of it? From just the mail-in ballot piece, and then of course you already addressed earlier the additional drop boxes. I see you nodding your head, so we'll just.
Yes, ma'am. Mark Voloshin, for the record. There was one other element that I think is worthy of calling out: the requirement for additional election workers. With an increased number of ballot drop boxes, there's kind of a balance that the county clerks are going to have to look at to achieve. Where if they have less boxes that are maybe bigger, then there's still a number of bipartisan teams that will have to go out to each of these drop boxes in their unique locations. So that cost, election workers, is a very significant cost to the counties, and is absolutely one worthy of note when discussing AB 321.
Thank you for that. And follow up, if I may, just for informational. Okay, I'll make it really quick. So do we know how many ballots were returned from the last election cycle because they were, do we have a report on that? It may have been fleshed out in the policy discussion, but because it has a fiscal impact, that might give us a better idea of just how much postage was burned on return ballots. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question. Mark Voloshin, for the record. We do have that information. It'll take me about a second to pull it up. I can tell you that we did mail out, again, 1.8 million ballots to the entire active registered voter population of the state prior to the 2020 general election cycle. And only 38% of those were actually cast, either mailed in or brought to their clerk's office as part of the election. Again, the rough numbers on that, I believe it was about 600,000 that were totally used.
Right, thank you. I'm going to go to Dr. Titus next, and then I have Majority Leader after.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to ask a question of the Secretary of State's office, actually. A lot of the discussion has been the need for this is to actually increase voter turnout. And so this question is regarding the cost versus the actual increased percent of voter turnout. And it's been thrown out that we had a maximum increase of voters this time around. And what I'd really like to do is compare apples to apples. And on the last presidential election cycle, it's been my understanding that we didn't really have a significant
And Dr. Titus, you're getting into the policy of the bill
well,
right
no, because
now?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask what the cost was per this election cycle versus the last election cycle, strictly fiscal.
And if the Secretary of State's office can answer that right now, that's fine. If not, please send it to us and we'll make it available to all of the committee members.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll provide that information to you at a later time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Majority Leader.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the question. So one of the things that is in this bill that we see is we do see an opt-out provision so that folks who do not want to vote by mail can remove themselves from that process and send a really affirmative statement to the Registrar of Voters office that they intend to do the process in person. Do you have some analysis about how that impacts your your ballot stock number and ballot box number as well.
Thank you for the question, Mark Voloshin, for the record. Absolutely. And if assuming that Assembly Bill 321 passes, that would be an important part of our voter education. The idea being that if we can identify the voters and explain to them what that process looks like to opt out of receiving a mail-in ballot, every single person we identify is cost savings to the county and to the state. Ultimately, there's less work for the county clerks to have to take care of it. They have less. So, in regards to the fiscal impact, we don't have a specific number because it's, again, kind of hard to assess how many folks would be interested in opting out. That is something that we take very seriously and are looking very closely at to make sure we get the word out, because that would be cost savings to the state, ultimately reducing the fiscal impact.
Thank you so much. So when I read this, I should know that you're working on the assumption that every single person stays engaged in the process. When I'm looking at these numbers, you don't already have assumptions built in here about a certain percentage of the population who might engage and not opt out. The assumptions and the numbers I'm seeing are 100% engagement through ballot process, mail-in process.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask about was the ballot boxes. And so as I read the fiscal note, the high quality ballot boxes range from $500 to $4,000 and all of that. I guess tell me about the types of, we obviously purchased some of these for the last election cycle and have some. So I guess, is this assuming just replacement boxes? Are these assuming an increase in overall quantity of boxes?
Thank you for the question, Mark Voloshin, for the record. Our analysis and discussion about the ballot boxes that resulted in that portion of our fiscal note was really a blank slate. We understand that the counties did purchase some ballot boxes for use. Haven't had a detailed discussion with them about if they were satisfied with them, if they weren't, if they intend to keep them, if in some cases they only held on to them for a short period of time. We did identify through our discussions with other states, though, that ballot boxes, especially in states that have universal vote by mail, there is a percentage between 2 and 5% of the total ballot boxes that have to be maintained or replaced each year. So we attempted to account for that as well in our discussions. And then lastly, we did not talk necessarily about the specific locations, street intersections specifically, that sort of thing, where each of these ballot boxes would go. Ultimately, with the clerks, we would work with them to identify those locations to see if certain areas require bigger ones or smaller ones, again, balancing that requirement to then also pay for workers to go to these ballot boxes to empty them. So it's a fairly complicated bit of calculus that, again, if Assembly Bill 321 passes, that we would have to go out to each county and based on their county unique requirements to assess exactly what that fiscal impact would be. Does that answer your question?
If I could get a little bit more specific, and it's not a large number we're talking about here, it's $196,000. So tell me about what that is based off. So that's based on the 2 to 5% replacement number that you talked about?
Yes, ma'am. Additionally, we started, again, the fiscal note we submitted was based on the as written bill with an estimate of approximately 1 box per 15,000 active registered voters, which is something that's a bit of a best practice to be identified in talking with some of my counterparts across the country. Since the amended version of the bill has come out, again, now it says there's a requirement for a ballot drop box at every polling location and allows for the clerks to establish drop boxes at other locations, which would be, again, more in keeping with what they did during the 2020 election cycle. Ultimately getting us to the 220 drop boxes. But again, we did account for and discuss in our initial planning and assessment of what that replacement schedule would look like.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I think we have some, the counties, at least Clark County, who might be available. So if it's okay, when we get to that point, I'm going to have the same question about kind of some of that opt-out and what the thinking is around how that might impact card stock.
Right, so with that, I'll go to Vice Chair Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Majority Leader asked my questions about the ballot boxes. I was kind of curious about what happened to those boxes from the last election, where they kept, who purchased them, the Secretary of State or the counties themselves. But my next question was about the voter education. Could you let us know what you currently do for voter education and outreach when it comes to elections and how much you currently spend on that outreach?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question. Mark Velasquez for the record. So our voter education campaigns up to this point have been fairly low cost and certainly low impact to the state, in part because, again, over the last few years, as has been explained to me, the voter outreach that we do is typically in-person visits to conferences, various organizations that request the Secretary of State to come talk and discuss what voter education looks like. But again, there's really been a sea change we've identified over the last election cycle, where previously voters would ask, how do I register to vote? Can you talk me through the 19th Amendment? And now the questions are more focused on, from the time I touch a screen, how does my vote go from there to ultimately being in front of the Supreme Court as part of that aggregate for their canvass, and having to explain a lot of the very specific, detailed, technical aspects of the elections process. Which again, from our point of view, is great. The more people know, that the less likely they are to be suspicious. The more transparency there is in the process, the more folks realize that, again, the machines that we use for voting in person, that the processes that we use for mail-in ballots, it's not magic. It's not mystery. We follow the statutes. Again, the clerks across the state and the Office of Secretary of State work closely together to make sure regulations are as they need to be to the benefit of the voters. So currently our voter education campaign, or really, again, from this point looking back, has been fairly minimal and low cost because we do not, as a division, the elections division does not have a marketing budget at all. That is something that I've identified already with the team, and we've discussed and putting into our actually 82nd special session budget build. We've already incorporated that into there, recognizing that going forward, we do need to have a more active outreach program, something that frankly has to be sustained, that needs to be the sort of outreach campaign that will reach not only current residents, but also the folks that are moving to Clark County next week, or up into Washoe, or anywhere in the rurals, so that there's a sustained amount of information going out there, so that, again, we're hitting the new electorate every year when folks turn 18 or move to the state. And given the transient nature of our state, it's a particularly hard project to work on.
If I could ask you to, if I could ask you to start paring back the remarks that are more related to the policy side and focus more on the fiscal side. I believe the question was more about the dollars towards, but we love to hear about voter education. That's great, but this is not the policy committee. We need to really focus on the fiscal side of voter education, please.
Yes, ma'am. Previously, we spent $0. Going forward, it's going to be more than $0, but we do not have a solid number identified for that. Does that answer your question?
Thank you for the long explanation. Yes and no. Your fiscal note's over $600,000 in both of the upcoming fiscal years, but you haven't really said what you're going to be doing. Are you paying for staff? Are you paying for attending meetings? Is that travel expenses that you're incurring? Because you've already talked about the stock, the ballot stock, so it's not that. Is it $661,000 in employee fees or HR? I don't get it. I don't understand.
Apologize for not clarifying. Mark Velasquez for the record. The two fiscal note years and dollar values that you identified, the $661,000 into two separate fiscal years, are modeled off after the campaign that we did following the passage of AB4. So that would include ads on the internet. That would include Facebook type ads, again, to get social media type involvement to get advertisements out there. That also includes, you'll notice the voter education postcards that we had on there as well, something that we did following the passage of AB4. So it would be something similar to that, though improved to be more focused based on our electorate in the coming years.
So thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you for saying that. So with the passage of AB4, you had already incurred some of these costs. So these are already processes that you have in place. So why the additional costs if you've already put these in place with the passage of AB4?
I understand the question, Mark Velasquez, for the record. Not processes, then I apologize. Previously, what that money went towards was a contract with an organization that did outreach and public awareness. That money paid for very specific targeted ads that described the AB4 and made folks aware of what was going to happen prior to the 2020 general election. This was not additional staff. There were not additional processes identified, though.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from any other committees? Mr. Roberts, Mr. Levitt, but we do need to roll along here.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
This is not a policy hearing, so
Yep, thank you, Madam
please be
Chair.
careful.
Yeah, correct. I'm trying to get to the funding aspect of it. So you did talk about your fiscal note that you put on there, the additional cost. Do you believe there would be any savings in in-person voting or, as a result of this, or does that pretty much stay static?
Thank you for the question, Mark Voloshin, for the record. I do anticipate that there will, over the long term, be a reduction in the overall costs. As folks get more comfortable voting by mail, that number will go up, and the number of personnel voting in person will decrease. That will have a direct effect on the clerks. The number of polling centers that they'll have to establish will, in time, begin to decrease. At least for the coming biennium, that will likely not be the case, but that there is certainly potential for that in the future.
And just a quick follow-up. So on your estimate on opt-in versus opt-out, if you opted in, let's say that roughly 38% of the electorate that were mailed ballots opted in to actually using them, do you think that could change that savings for in-person voting if you switch from an opt-out to an opt-in?
Thank you for the question, Mark Voloshin, for the record. It could. It's hard to assess what exactly the electorate's going to do, given 2020 was, as previously identified, a bit of an anomaly. We can look at it and provide some further analysis later, though, if that's acceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts and Mr. Levitt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just following up on the fiscal side of the opt-in, opt-out that my colleague had mentioned. If you guys had done an analysis versus opt-in, what the cost of opt-in versus the cost of opt-out would do when you were doing your fiscal analysis on this?
Thank you for the question, Mark Voloshin, for the record. We looked closely at our current process, and our current process is that opt-in process where, again, no excuse absent ballot requests. Anyone can go to their county clerk and identify the requirement for absent ballot, and they can get it. As a result, we've had a fairly low percentage of our electorate who's chosen to do so. The opt-out would be the opposite end of the spectrum, where, again, we would have a large number of folks get ballots, every one of our active registered voters, and there would be some folks that would ultimately figure out and be made aware of the opportunity to opt out. But really, it's the two ends of the spectrum in regards to the fiscal impact of the state.
Right. Thank you, and I believe this will be I just have one more question. No, I'm going to someone else, and then I'll come back. Mr. Watts.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just had a question for the Secretary of State. What's your average cost per ballot?
Thank you for the question, Mark Voloshin, for the record. The 2020 election cycle identified $1.46 per ballot. That is unfortunately, again, kind of unique to 2020, as we've already been identified. It's already been identified by the U.S. Postal Service that their rates are going up for future years. So the $1.46 isn't something that you will see likely again. It's also worthy of note, again, that each county ultimately pays a different cost based on the numbers of ballots that they're getting. So looking to the future, again, it will be above $1.46 per ballot.
So you expect it will be above. And is that cost consistent? I know this is difficult because of where we are in the conversation right now, but is that consistent with what we'd see in Clark County? I don't know if the registrar might be able to step in, or Mr. Voloshin, if you know.
We'll go ahead and go to Mr. Gloria if it's a question for Clark County. I think that's most appropriate. Mr. Gloria?
For the record, Joe Gloria, Joegloria, Registrar of Voters in Clark County. That number is pretty consistent with what our costs are here in Clark County. As Mr. Voloshin mentions, it varies according to the number of ballots that are returned or actually sent out. There's a savings in cost.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. I'll go to the Majority Leader for a final question, and then we do need to move on. So, Majority Leader.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to confirm the numbers that I just heard, because in the fiscal note, it says the cost for ballot stock based on information from the counties and reimbursements from the ballot stock of the 2016 general election worked out to be $2.97 per ballot. And then I just heard $1.46 per ballot, which is about, a whole dollar and about $1.50, $1.40 less per ballot. So I guess tell me what the difference is in those two numbers, or what I'm missing from the written statement versus the verbal statement.
Yes, ma'am. Mark Voloshin for the record. The difference is that $1.46 was the cost of the ballots overall. That's the statewide aggregate based on the 2020 general election. As you all know, again, it was a unique year. Vendors were doing everything from trying to reduce costs to help expedite, given the unique conditions that the entire country was under. When we heard that the U.S. Postal Service would be increasing their rates, instead of using what we knew then to be demonstrably false set of numbers, the $1.46, and recognizing that it would not be that cheap going forward, we looked to the then previous election cycle and identified the $2.97 that you referenced earlier in regards to the cost for ballots, estimating that may be at the very least closer to it. And will also, I think, drive home the importance to us of making sure folks are aware of that opt-out process and how important it is for every single voter to be aware if they do not want a ballot, again, that provides savings to the state.
Thank you so much. And then I'll just leave my last comment on the record. And I thank you for allowing me to do so, Madam Chair. But I think that conversations around changing it to an opt-in versus an opt-out are substantial policy changes. And I think couching it behind a fiscal note is a red herring. I don't think that's at all a decision that I mean, it's an absolute policy decision. I just want to make sure I leave that on the record.
Thank you. With that, that's enough questions, I believe, for the speaker and just to get enough information on the fiscal notes. So with that, we will move into the support, opposition, and neutral portion of the hearing. We'll go ahead and open it up for support on AB 321 here in the room. Please proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. I'm here in support of Assembly Bill 321 and believe this investment in increasing access to voting for Nevadans is one of the best investments this committee can make. We saw the positive results from your investment with AB 4, and now we need to invest in these measures permanently. Please support AB 321. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Holly Welborn, Policy Director for the ACLU of Nevada. We are a proud member of the Let Nevadans Vote Coalition. During each election cycle, I serve as the lead election protection manager for Washoe County, where we assist hundreds of voters, both Republicans, nonpartisans, Democrats, and third-party voters with their mail ballots, understanding the same-day voter registration system, understanding their First Amendment rights at polling places, and more. One thing is clear: no matter where one falls on the ideological spectrum or one's opinion on mail-in voting, the majority of Nevadans want options. We should invest in voting systems to ensure that we do not repeat the mistakes of the 2020 primary, where the last person in Clark County cast their ballot at 3 a.m. That is a failure of democracy. As our distinguished speaker pointed out, this isn't standing in line at Costco for a $1.49 hot dog. This is the exercise of an individual's most sacred constitutional right, the fundamental right to vote. The state should invest in making it as easy as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Carlton, members of the committee. Priscilla Maloney with the AFSCME retirees. Again, I will try and be brief, but I do want to add a little bit that we were not able, because of a scheduling conflict, to testify on the policy side back in April, but this was one of our top priority bills this session, and that was in part because of the success for my membership's individual experience after AB4 was passed. My group was frightened at that time, concerned about their ability to get to a poll. They recognized that there would be some cost and that this would be controversial in the background of the pandemic, but they were very grateful that anecdotally, after they had voted, that they'd had all these different options depending on their individual circumstances. And as I said, our membership is an older population with a lot of differently abled folks in that population. And so as far as the cost goes, yes, change does cost some money, but this seems enormously like a good idea. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Daly.
Madam Chair, Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, also in support of AB 321. NSCA does engage in elections. We do talk with students about the democratic system and participation. We believe that AB 321 is worth the state's investment to adopt the best practices of vote by mail while also ensuring in-person voting options and addressing concerns about election integrity and security. Thank you.
Thank you. Other folks in support here in the room? Seeing none. Anyone in support on Zoom? Seeing none, we'll go to support on the phone line, please.
If you would like to testify in support on AB 321, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 528. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Barry Gold, Barry Gold, and I'm the Director of Government Relations for AARP Nevada. Many people, whether they be older adults, people with disabilities, people with lack of technology, have difficulty applying for absentee ballots. Helping these people, actually the value of helping these people, and actually the value of helping all active registered voters exercise their fundamental American right to vote is worth so much more than this fiscal note. AARP, on behalf of the thousands and thousands and thousands of AARP members across the state, who, by the way, frequently are the largest voting bloc in elections, strongly support this bill and urge the committee to pass it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Support on the phone line, please.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 018. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. My name is Jim Sullivan, Sullivan, and I'm representing the Culinary Union. I will keep my comments brief. We fully support this bill for all the reasons that my colleagues have just brought forth. Making voting easier and more accessible to Nevadans is something the Culinary will always 100% support. So we stand fully in support of this bill and thank the Speaker for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 201. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chairwoman Carlton and committee members. For the record, my name is Emily Prasad Zamora, Executive Director of Silver State Voices and the Let Nevadans Vote Coalition, in strong support of AB 321. We believe that it's imperative as a state and that we properly invest in the civic engagement of our citizens, and I urge this committee to support voting rights for all Nevadans. Please support AB 321. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next one in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 759. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Haley Lindsley, HaileyLindsley, and I'm an organizer for Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada. Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada is supportive of AB 321 because we believe that every Nevadan should be engaged in the electoral process. And the more accessible this process is, the more open to others who would otherwise not be able to participate. And that makes for a better, stronger democracy. AB 321 increases access for BIPOC communities in our rural Nevadan communities by establishing convenient ballot drop boxes and giving Nevadans a variety of options to make their voices heard and cast their ballots in a safe way. We believe in safe and secure elections, and that increased participation in elections makes for a better Nevada. Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada urges you to support AB 321 to give Nevadans a choice in how they cast their ballots. Thank you.
Next caller, please.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 069. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller 069, please press star 6 to unmute.
Hello, Madam Chair. This is Andre Wade again, ANDREWADE, State Director for Silver State Equality. In short, we're in full support of AB 321 because it would expand access to the ballot box while ensuring election security. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next caller.
Caller with the last three digits, 653. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair Carlton, and the rest of the committee. This is Dora Martinez, DORA-MARTINEZ, and I represent the Nevada Peer Action Coalition. And we ditto everybody's statement before mine. As a person with a disability, representing people with disability in the state of Nevada, we strongly agree with this bill and support this bill. And thank you, Chairman Frierson. I'll be going for that hot dog. Thank you. Have a good day.
Can't mention a Costco hot dog in this building. So with anyone else in support?
Caller with the last three digits, 611. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair Carlton and members of the committee. My name is Eric Zheng, ERICJENG, testifying on behalf of Asian Community Development Council. And based on the data we're seeing, the 2020 voter turnout for the Asian Pacific Islander voters are unprecedented, 127% increase compared to 2016 for early and mail-in ballots, and 30% increase in overall vote share for the Asian Pacific Islander communities. By continuing to make voting safe and accessible to Nevadans, we are able to allow our community to fully participate, make their voices heard. It's critical that AB 321 passes and protect access to the democracy. We thank you, Speaker Frierson, for bringing this up, and ditto to all the previous testimonies. Good points. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next person in support.
Caller with the last three digits, 831. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Buenos días. My name is Ceci Alvarado, CECIA-ALVARADO. I'm the Nevada State Director for Mi Familia Vota, and we proudly support AB 321. In behalf of all the hardworking Latino families, expanding the options to voting, it's protecting our democracy and building a more inclusive democracy. So we appreciate the sponsors for supporting this bill and our partners, and we encourage this committee to pass AB 321. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits, 237. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Marlene Lockard, LOCKARD, representing SEIU 1104. We are in support of AB 321, and as the others have already stated, the many reasons to support this legislation, and we commend the sponsor for bringing it forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
For those of you that have just joined the call, if you would like to testify in support on AB 321, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you very much. So we'll go to opposition. Is there opposition here in the room? Seeing no opposition in the room, we'll go to opposition on the phone line. Oh, wait a minute. I skipped Zoom. I apologize, Secretary of State's representative. So we will go to opposition in Zoom.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Carlton and members of the committee. Mark Voloshin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. The Office of the Secretary of State is opposed to this bill due to the negative fiscal impact it will have on the state. If AB 321 is passed, the state and counties would incur significant costs each election cycle. These costs would include the reimbursement of appropriate county expenses due to NAC 293.200, which requires the Secretary of State to reimburse the counties for the costs of ballot stock as well as the purchase of an installment of ballot drop boxes across the state, as well as a voter outreach campaign to inform voters. If passed, the total anticipated fiscal impact has been identified as approximately $6.8 million in FY 21-22, $6.3 million in 22-23, and approximately $11.3 million for each future biennia. The anticipated cost of ballot stock was calculated based on historic costs. The initial anticipated cost of ballot drop boxes was based on an estimate of 1 per 15,000 active registered voters and was approximately $196,000. However, sections 8 and 56 of the amended version of the bill now require a ballot drop box at every polling location and allows for clerks to establish other drop box locations. That would increase the number of drop boxes from an initial estimate of 131 to approximately 220 drop boxes based on the number used during the 2020 general election cycle. However, the costs identified in our original fiscal note remains valid, as each county will validate their drop box locations prior to the next election cycle, and there may not be as many required as there were during the 2020 general election. Regarding our estimated costs for voter outreach and education, we estimate approximately $1.6 million to pay for a focused and sustained voter outreach campaign. Our voter outreach campaign would focus on the requirements of Section 23 of the bill, but would also stress how voters could permanently opt out if they so desire, as described in Sections 3 and 51. Of note, our total marketing budget as an agency is only $900 per fiscal year, and none of that is in the elections budget. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So I don't see any other opposition on Zoom, so we'll go to opposition on the phone line, please.
If you would like to testify in opposition to AB 321, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 035. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. My name is Quentin Savoy, Deputy Director at Make It Work Nevada. I intended to support this bill, and unfortunately my call dropped, so I apologize to be on in the opposition line. May I proceed with support testimony for 1 minute?
Yes, you may. Please go ahead. That's fine. We understand.
Thank you. My name is Quentin, Quentin, last name Savoy, Savwoir. Again, I'm the Deputy Director at Make It Work Nevada, part of the Let Nevadans Vote Coalition. We're deeply appreciative of the Speaker for bringing this measure forward. We support AB 321 because expanding voting access is the best way to ensure a strong democracy and a strong Nevada for our future. Thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone in opposition?
Caller with the last 3 digits, 859. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Janine Hansen, Janinehannesen. I'm the state chairman of the Independent American Party. We oppose AB 321. The fiscal note from the Secretary of State's office is over $11 million for the biennia, but the cost of AB 321 will be much greater. The United States was founded as a republic with principles of democracy demonstrated through our elections. What we have seen witnessed around the world and many other countries is that when people lose confidence in the integrity of their elections, a breakdown of the peaceful democratic process gives way to violence. This is born of deep frustration because people believe that their vote doesn't count and there is no peaceful recourse. Because the Democrats have a majority in both houses of the legislature and the governor does not mean it's wise to change the time-honored election process in Nevada to one which mirrors California's. Almost half of the voting population in Nevada does not believe we had an honest election in 2021. When you choose to implement all mail-in voting, ballot harvesting, electronic rather than human signature verification, you simply perpetuate and exacerbate the feelings of distrust in the election process. One problem in our law that creates distrust is the fact that in NRS 483.391-4C requires driver's authorization cards be numbered from the same sequence of numbers as the driver's license. So there is no way to distinguish a driver's license of a citizen from a driver's authorization card of a possible non-citizen. This means that the Secretary of State and any local election official who has no way of determining by checking the number on a driver's authorization card or a driver's license if the person registering to vote may not be a citizen. This is by legislative design and handicaps the Secretary of State and local election officials in checking the possibly removing non-citizens from our voter registration rolls. This further creates distrust in the election process. AB 321 enshrines in our law that people registering to vote at the DMV do not have to show proof of identity or residency at the first time they vote for federal elections. Please do not squander any trust left in our election process. Vote no on AB 321. Thank you.
Next caller in opposition, please.
Caller with the last three digits, 373. Please slowly state and spell your name. For the record, you will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Bob Russo. That is Bobrusso, and I oppose AB 321. One of the most devastating effects of the November election is that it left a considerable portion of the electorate distrusting the election process and a huge scar on our nation, including the state of Nevada. This is not a Democrat versus Republican issue. It is an election integrity issue. According to a Rasmussen poll from November of last year, 20 to 30% of Democrats believe that fraud was an issue in the election. Unfortunately, this bill does nothing to restore election integrity. It would ensure that the voting irregularities we observed in the last election under AB 4 continue indefinitely. Mail-in ballots are a waste of money and ripe for misuse, especially when the option to request an absentee ballot is easily available. And ballot harvesting adds to the chance for abuse. And it does not require someone to appear in person with a valid ID the first time they vote. These are just a few issues concerned with this bill. It should be in the interest of both parties to initiate practical election reform that includes cleaning up the voter rolls so that we are assured that our votes will count and not be canceled out by someone trying to cheat the system. I still prefer paper ballots accompanied by voter IDs, simple and straightforward. Again, the measures in this bill will not restore integrity to our elections and trust in the election process. No, they will open the door to potential election fraud and further weaken and divide our state in the process. I will conclude by saying when I last checked, the opinions against this bill was 1,939 against 818 in favor. So it's a substantial difference between the two. So please, I urge you to oppose AB 321, and let's get our elections back on track. Thank you.
Next caller in opposition, please.
Caller with the last three digits, 304. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, committee. My name is Jim DeGraffenreid, DeGraffenreid. I'm the Republican National Committeeman for the state of Nevada, and the Nevada Republican Party stands in strong opposition to this bill. As I testified earlier on AB 126, this committee is concerned with allocating resources. Even if the expenses are only $3.9 million per election versus $5 million, we are still talking about millions of dollars of taxpayer money being spent on a bill that doesn't provide the turnout benefits that supporters have referenced in their testimony earlier. This bill is presented to extend the temporary emergency provisions of AB 4 from the last special session and make them permanent for all elections going forward. AB 321 is being falsely presented as a way to increase voter turnout, but the facts show that AB 4 did not increase turnout significantly. Yes, more total votes were cast, but that is because there were more registered voters to cast them. Both numbers increased by about 25% over those 4 years. Secretary of State data reports that from 2016 to 2020, registered voters in Nevada increased from 1.4 million to 1.8 million. At 77.26%, 2020 turnout was only about 0.5% higher than the 2016 election, 76.7%. Far from being record turnout, it was down more than 3.5% from 80.77% in the 2012 presidential election.
To answer Minority Leader Titus's question from earlier, if Nevada would have had the same turnout of 76.7% in 2020 without AB4, then AB4 can be credited with an additional 10,160 votes cast. If the cost stated earlier of $3.9 million is accurate, then it's difficult to make the case that an increase of 10,160 votes out of 1.8 million registered voters was worth spending $3.9 million of taxpayer dollars. In closing, there's no reason to believe that this bill will increase turnout or ballot access. Nevadans have always had complete freedom to choose to vote in person or by mail on Election Day or early, even without new laws. All AB 321 will do is needlessly increase state costs while making permanent the greatly reduced security of our election that was temporarily created by AB 4 in 2020. We strongly urge a no vote on AB 321. Thank you.
Next caller in opposition, please.
Caller with the last three digits, 638. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair. And just like Bob Russo stated, I did all but I feel it's an integrity issue, and I think we need to clean our voter rolls before we start doing the mail-in ballot. I realize, with the other callers that there's something that needs the mail-in or the opt-in option as well, but for right now, with the dirty voter rolls up, we really need to clean up.
I apologize. You're breaking up. We're only getting every couple of words. If you would like to email your comments in, we'll make sure that they're associated with the bill. But we have a very bad connection, so I apologize. We need to move on to the next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits, 105. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. My name is Lynn Chapman. I'm the State Treasurer of the Independent American Party, LYNNCHAPMAN. We oppose AB 321. People are still talking about the last election. They're not saying it went well or it was a wonderful experience, but they are saying it was a train wreck. We should not be spending more or any tax money on elections that we don't even trust or believe in. Mail-in ballots, ballot harvesting, automatic voter registration systems, and the lack of proof of identity and residency are most concerning. We believe taxpayer money will not be spent wisely. This bill is a train wreck using taxpayer money. Thank you.
Next caller in opposition, please.
Caller with the last three digits, 555. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, members of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means, Gillette Gowans, JOLETTEGOWENS of Las Vegas. I would like to communicate my strong opposition to Assembly Bill 321. I have a simple question for each of you. How many fraudulent votes are acceptable? The correct answer is 0. What if it was you that lost by less than a few hundred votes? Would you have been outraged, or would you just continue to say that there's no widespread fraud? In 2020, dead people, thousands of non-citizens' votes cast from vacant lots, illegitimate ballots were sent to nameless residents, were cast, and people were willfully buying and selling votes on video. Yet not a single person is gone to jail.
Your opposition,
ma'am,
I'm going to cut you off.
Yes.
Your opposition is more to the policy piece. It's not aimed at the fiscal side. So if you have oppositions as far as the fiscal component, we'd be more than happy to hear that. But you're going to the policy side, and we don't do that in this committee. So please proceed if you have fiscal concerns.
Okay. My fiscal concern is that this is not $1 should be spent on continuing this farce. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next caller in opposition, please.
Caller with the last three digits, 159. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Kimberly Maxim, KIMBERLEY MAXIM. I am in opposition to Bill 321. I have been in Nevada since 1980. I think that we have all made it to the polls just fine, whether I've been working or not. With the introduction of early voting, there's no reason why anybody can't make it to the polls to vote. I also have a small property up there in Esmeralda County, and so fiscally speaking, there's not enough money in Nevada's budget to keep this type of voting going on indefinitely. We have so many other things that we could spend money on instead of drop boxes that are not needed, mailed ballots that are not necessarily needed either. I think it's a total waste of money, and I just don't know how our smaller communities, our rural counties, are going to keep up with this kind of fiscal demand. It just, I mean, they have roads to clear. They have other places to spend their money besides printing and drop boxing and blah, blah, blah. So yes, please don't put this bill forward. It's not fiscally feasible. Thank you so very much for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? And please, opposition folks, remember this is opposition to the fiscal component, not to the policy. It's already had a policy hearing. Next person, please.
Caller with the last three digits, 532. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Wendy Ellis, WENDYELLIS, and I'm calling in opposition to AB 321. It's a whole lot of money spent on printing ballots for every so-called active registered voter, which is a misleading term. I wish that people would define it. To print and mail all these ballots. I personally received ballots delivered to my home. I'm the only person that's lived here. These were addressed to people who don't live here. So to say that this is ensuring integrity of the vote is simply not true. It would cost far less to educate people and have an opt-in rather than the opt-out. And also earlier, I heard some testimony on AB 488, the DMV needs money. Well, maybe they should get out of the business of voter registration and stick to vehicle registration and driver's licenses. I resent my tax dollars being wasted in order so somebody can just pick up a live ballot that I could have cast all 3 of those ballots, couldn't I? It wouldn't have been legal, but it seems that our legislature doesn't care about that. But I resent my tax dollars being used for just to mess up an election, which is exactly what happened in 2020. Thank you for your time. I urge you to vote again.
So with that, we have taken a lot of testimony in opposition. If there are any more on the line, I'm only going to take 2 more. And after that, we'll ask the others that if they're in the opposition to email in their opposition and we will associate it. We have 1 more bill to do today moving forward. So opposition, broadcast services, only the next 2 people, and then from there we're going to stop. So next person, please.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 319. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, committee. Melissa Clement, MELISSACLEMENT, representing Nevada Right to Life, in opposition to AB 321. In general, because we worry that unsecured ballots going out to everyone without a chain of custody throughout the ballot process is inherently problematic. As such, we are concerned with the lack of fiscal notes for resources devoted to ballot security, election fraud investigation, and election prosecution. In the 2020 election, there were numerous complaints of possible election fraud. Several times we were told that there were insufficient resources currently devoted to investigation, so investigations did not happen. But a cursory glance of the attached fiscal notes shows no fiscal resources being devoted to these areas. There's not a fiscal note for the AG's office or any of the district attorneys who would presumably investigate and prosecute any issues. Additionally, there are no fiscal notes for counties. Election security is a bipartisan issue that will affect both parties for the future. Please vote no on AB 321.
The final caller in opposition, please.
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. So with that, we will go to neutral. Are there anyone in neutral here in the room? Not seeing anyone coming forward. Is there any neutral on the phone line? And I do mean neutral.
Madam Chair, Joe Gloria, Registrar of Voters in Clark County, Nevada.
Mr. Gloria, thank you.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Good morning. Coming in representing Clark County to testify neutral. There's been much testimony today. I only wish to convey the message that we sincerely appreciate the speaker's efforts to include the input of election officials in trying to make the language in place work so that we can administrate it and uphold the integrity of the election process, which is our main goal. As long as the resources are provided, we'll be prepared to support the bill language and provide mail ballots across the board. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Gloria, and thank you to you and all of your staff for everything that you did through the last election cycle to keep our democracy running forward. We really appreciate all the work that you've done. And thank you for being in neutral. So with that, is there any neutral on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in neutral on AB 321, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 792. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller 792, please press star 6 to unmute.
Good morning. My name is Aubrey Rowlett, AubreyRowlatt, Carson City Clerk Recorder. And Carson City is neutral on this bill as well. I just wanted to add an additional fiscal thought to consider that active registered voters who, within the allowed time frame, change any information on their voter registration, which includes party changes, addresses, or names, either through the regular registration update process or through the AVR process at DMV, will automatically be sent a new mail ballot. This does incur an additional mail ballot packet and a postage cost. Although this may seem like a minimal cost, it does add up. Additionally, many rural county clerk offices are not adequately sized to perform all functions required to administer an alt-mail election. We will need to find alternative office location solutions, which will be a cost to the city or the county. For the 2020 general election, due to COVID, alternative county city buildings were available for use due to the closures. However, this will not be the case for future elections. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other callers in neutral?
Chair, that was the last caller in neutral. There are no more in the queue at this time.
Thank you very much. I'll invite Speaker Frierson back to the table for any closing comments, and then we'll move on to the next bill. Speaker Frierson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, again, Jason Frierson. I will be brief. We've had a substantive hearing on this issue, and much of what's raised today was addressed in the substantive hearings and in the amendments that it intended to address many of the concerns with respect to election security and integrity and trust in the process. I will thank the committee for their engagement in pointing out that while there are concerns about cost, those concerns did not take into account the changes that will result in a decrease in costs, such as opt-out, such as efforts that were amended into it to make it easier to clean the rolls and do it more frequently. I'll also point out that while we, on a couple of occasions, have talked about voter education, that clearly was not an issue for the Secretary of State before now. And there are organizations in the community that do this for free who would be more than willing to partner with the Secretary of State at a significant decrease, if not zero cost, to do voter education in the community here. So I appreciate our local election officials in particular, who I have communicated and worked with extensively throughout this process. I appreciate that their comments were reflective of the costs and not of the substance. And so I certainly appreciate the note that they are neutral on the policy, but concerned about the cost and wanting to make sure it's provided for. I think that for any agency would be the appropriate position to be when your only concern is fiscal impact, but that's why we're in Ways and Means. And so again, I thank you all for your time and attention.
And thank you very much, Speaker Frierson. We're going to go ahead and close the hearing on that bill, and Speaker Frierson's at the table. This is Speaker Frierson morning in Ways and Means. So with that, we are going to go ahead and open it up for AB 422. Speaker, when you are ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Jason Frierson, Assemblyman in District 8. I feel like every day is Jason Frierson Day, but I am pleased to present to you AB 422, which will update and modernize our voter registration database. Right now, Nevada is one of just 6 states to use bottom-up voter registration system. County clerks and registrars maintain their county voter registration rolls and use a database specific to their county. Voter information is collected and stored at the local level and reported up to the statewide system on a regular basis. This level of coordination inherently makes the process slower. AB 422 will move us away from bottom-up system and move us to a top-down system instead. Additionally, while bottom-up systems in other states share information in real time, our data sharing is only transmitted daily. Of course, we are here because of the fiscal note. I will simply note with respect to the fiscal note that from what I could glean, the Secretary of State's fiscal note reflected approximately $9.2 million. This is something that is going to take at least 4 years to implement. And everyone who has been involved with elections has indicated an interest in moving us to a top-down system. However, I believe that the Secretary of State's office has also indicated in meetings and presentations that $4.8 million from the HAVA grant would be going towards a top-down system, and I did not see in the fiscal note where that was taken into account to reduce the $9.2 million fiscal that was provided. I will note, as with the previous proposed legislation, that the fiscal notes seem to reflect the worst-case scenario and not necessarily a practical approach that could mitigate costs. And I think that what we're trying to do here is enhance and make sure our system competes with other states and is the best, but we also want to mitigate costs and do that by taking advantage of federal dollars and other measures that would not increase the costs unduly. So I think states across the country, especially Nevada, have noticed the effects of outdated technology and infrastructure that have hampered our state and local government's ability to deliver services effectively and efficiently to our constituents. I believe modernizing our voter registration database and processes is a step in the right direction to streamline our state government. And that concludes my testimony, Madam Chair. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Speaker. So questions from the committee for Speaker Frierson at this time? This is the fiscal policy, so we're going to focus on the fiscal note. I think we need to have the Secretary of State respond with the concern of if the HAVA dollars are available, if you could put that on the record, the amount, where we actually are as far as the fiscal note goes. Secretary of State, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark Washington, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. Appreciate the Speaker's comments. Absolutely understand and agree that the intent from the very start, even before Assembly Bill 422 was developed in draft form, was to use the HAVA grant to conduct this transition to a top-down system. Currently, we have about $6.8 million left in the HAVA grant, and they're very much, like the Speaker said, is an intent to use at least the first 4.8 directly to put towards this project. honestly, regardless if 422 is passed, that's the long-term goal is to intend to use the HAVA grant through the biennium. And actually, as a result, there is not a current intent or requirement or request, rather, for any appropriation during the coming biennium relating to the passage of 422.
Thank you very much. So with that, committee members, are there any other questions at this time? Seeing none, with that, I don't think we have anything else. Short and sweet, like it that way. So with that, this is the hearing on Assembly Bill 422. We'll go ahead and open it up for those in support. Those in support in the room, please.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. I am here in support of Assembly Bill 422. By investing in this legislation, we will be able to have a much more secure, modern, and efficient top-down system. And we ask you to support this critical investment to continue to make our state the best in the country in terms of voting. Please support AB 422. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room in support? Seeing none? Anyone in support on the Zoom? No support on Zoom. Anyone in support broadcast services on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in support on AB 422, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 201, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chairwoman Carlton and committee members. For the record, my name is Emily Prasad Zamora, Executive Director of Silver State Voices in the Let Nevadans Vote Coalition, in strong support of Assembly Bill 422. Investing in this bill is critical so we can prevent any costly mistakes brought on by the inefficiency and inconvenience from our current bottom-up system. We ask that you invest in our democracy by voting yes on AB 422. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next person in support, please.
Chair, that was our only caller in support.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to opposition in the room. Is there any opposition in the room? Seeing no one come forward, is there any opposition on Zoom? Seeing no one, opposition on the phone line, please.
If you would like to testify in opposition to AB 422, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. We'll go to neutral. Is there any neutral in the room? Not seeing any. We'll go to neutral on Zoom.
Madam Chair, Joe Gloria, Registrar of Voters, Clark County, Nevada. Thank you for the opportunity. We are testifying in the neutral position representing Clark County. However, I want to emphasize that there is nothing more critical than the investment in the top-down voter registration. No election official in the state of Nevada would tell you any different. The top-down voter registration is necessary to give us the tools that we need to protect the integrity of the voting process, to improve our ability to clean the rolls, to improve our canvassing time period. Most everything that's critical administratively and providing elections for the citizens of Nevada and Clark County tie into the ability for us to go to a top-down voter registration system. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Gloria. Anyone else on Zoom in neutral?
Madam Chair.
Yes, proceed.
Thank you. Mark Voloshin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. The Office of the Secretary of State is neutral on this bill. However, again, while I did just talk about the intent to use the HAVA grant, so I won't reiterate that, I do just want to stress that as discussed, our fiscal note, while it certainly seems large, the intent was not to make this something, again, overbearing or intimidating, but simply to capture the anticipated costs. This agency very much believes that we have a moral obligation to preserve tax dollars. And going forward, if this bill is passed, we absolutely are going to do everything we can to reduce the costs to the taxpayers while conducting this transition to a top-down system that, as Mr. Gloria said, is absolutely vital to the moving forward and future of elections here in Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could go to neutral on the phone line, please.
If you would like to testify in neutral on AB 422, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair Carlton, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you very much. With that, I'll go ahead and invite the speaker back up to the testimony table for closing remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Jason Frierson for the record. If my hearing is correct and there's a zero fiscal, I will stop now and yield back to the committee.
Quit while you're ahead, Mr. Speaker. We need to put that on a wall someplace so people read it more often. With that, we will go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 422. Give me just a moment to figure out where we are next. So with that, committee members, since we have the speaker here, and who knows if I'll get him back later today, we're going to go ahead and open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 220.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jason Frierson, Assemblyman for District 8. I will attempt to be brief. Assembly Bill 220 simply requires law enforcement agencies to develop a written policy that sets forth standards of conduct for using publicly issued and official mobile devices and prohibits the use of mobile applications that use end-to-end encryption with the intent, and that's incredibly important, with the intent to avoid the creation, retention, or lawful discovery of records or data relating to the communications of a police officer. In short, and I'm going to not even read my script, in short, apps like Signal should not be used in a way that avoids detection of discoverable evidence. My understanding is both Metro and Department of Corrections initially submitted fiscal notes, but upon follow-up and clarification of the intent of the bill have removed their fiscal notes, and I have provided that to committee staff.
Thank you very much, and committee staff has received those documents. I'm getting a, go ahead, Ms. Kaufman.
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Speaker. So with that, are there any questions of the Speaker at this time on Assembly Bill 220? Not seeing any questions at this time. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for not letting that one slip by me. Appreciate it. So with that, we'll go ahead and open up the hearing for testimony on Assembly Bill 220. Those here in the room in support of Assembly Bill 220, if you'd like to come forward. Not seeing anyone in support. Anyone on Zoom? I see no one on Zoom. So with that, I'll open up the phone lines for support of Assembly Bill 220.
If you would like to testify in support on AB 220, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Thank you very much. So with that, if we have anyone in opposition in the room? Seeing no opposition. Any opposition on the phone lines, please?
If you would like to testify in opposition to AB 220, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. Anyone in neutral in the room? Seeing none, neutral on the phone line, please.
If you would like to testify in neutral on AB 220, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. No closing comments. You know when to fold them. Good job. So with that, I'll go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 220. And we'll invite the Majority Leader down on Assembly Bill 196. And I believe this is the last bill that we will have a hearing on this morning. We do need to do a work session. Let's see how long this takes, and we'll go from there. This is the time of year when we all have to be flexible. The majority leader is handing an amendment to staff. Staff will pass it out, and then we'll open up the hearing. With that, Majority Leader, I'm happy to open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 196. Please proceed.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, members of Assembly Ways and Means, for hearing Assembly Bill 196. This is a bill that, in the amendment, is requesting an appropriation to the administrative offices of the courts for the purposes of awarding grants of money to municipal and justice courts for the cost of making sure that we can offer public spaces for within our courthouses for the folks that come in to be able to express milk. And so what this is many of the courts have already identified existing space that they can call a lactation room. There's a handful of courts, though, that aren't able to identify an existing space to allow a mother to express her milk. And so for those specific instances, what we're looking to do with this bill is set up some money so there can be a matching grant program to allow for the purchase of lactation pods. Going to the conceptual amendment, section 1.1, you're going to see that here in the initial bill, we talk about requiring a place for a mother to express milk in each courthouse. And I've got the requested amendment to change this to, as opposed to each courthouse, to allow for language that there be one place, a room or a pod, when the consideration is that you have multiple courts that are housed in the same building or in the same campus, and that is often true. So we don't need one per each court if they're all in the same building. We would just need one for that building there. And then section 2, we are amending it. So I believe in the first reprint, you see $500,000. We lopped off a zero, so it's 50. You also see that as opposed to having this be a process in 1.5 that comes back through IFC, that just didn't work well because the courts don't come back to us for dollars. So it makes more sense to hand this off to the administrative office of the courts. And then third, the district courts have asked to be written into this so that they could have an opportunity to apply for these pots of these dollars as well. And so per their request, I am adding them in. I also do want to note for the record that under section 1.5 and sub 2 is already existing language about allowing for grants from other sources as well as other public and private dollars. So conversations with the courts, knowing that they, in anticipation of holding jury trials and expecting a lot more public to be in their building, especially at the municipal level, that they indeed do want to put an effort into getting more lactation pods in there, and we'll be searching for other ways to do that as well. So that's it, and I stand open for questions.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader. Questions for committee's members? Ms. Tolles.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks so much for bringing forward this legislation. I work with a lot of lawyers and judges, and also this is for members of the public who engage in the court proceedings. And so these are barriers that maybe not every member of the population could understand. Really do create a barrier for working professionals as well as members of the public with an access to justice and their constitutional right to participate, and this is helpful. So I appreciate this legislation. I just wanted to confirm that when we have the one-time appropriation of $50,000, is there I just want to make sure we don't run into a situation where there's a court building that might not be compliant if that 50,000 runs out. So could you tell me a little bit more about how you came to that $50,000 number and what we would do if that's not sufficient to ensure compliance across the state?
Thank you so much. I appreciate the question. So you are going to see one fiscal note already submitted from, I believe it's the Carson City area, stating that they have 2 courts that they can identify right now that don't have a space that they can call a lactation room upon request for someone. And then we know of one also in Washoe County. So there's 3 that we know of. The lactation pods are approximately about $10,000 each. I've been talking with Clark County about what their need might be. We anticipate that there will need to be maybe a couple of more. But if you look at the language within Section 1, we give kind of a wide, a lot of latitude for lots of different considerations to make sure that this doesn't end up being an unfunded mandate. If you look at the implementation dates as well, we are allowing Section 1.5 to become effective on July 1st, which means the money over to the administrator of courts for the grant, so that we kind of get the money out first and then the rest of the provisions on January 1st, 2022. So then the hard policy enforcement will follow later on.
Thank you for that research and that implementation timeline.
Thank you very much. Committee members, any other questions of the Majority Leader at this time? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Majority Leader. We appreciate it. With that, we'll go ahead and open it up for support, opposition, and neutral. So with that, those who are in support of Assembly Bill 196, please come forward.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ariel Edwards on behalf of the City of North Las Vegas. We would like to state for the record that we are in support of Assembly Bill 196 and would like to thank the Assemblywoman for bringing this piece of legislation forward. We appreciate that this bill prioritizes women and gives them a safe space to take care of their families. Thank you so much for your time and consideration today.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the room in support? Not seeing anyone else come forward. Appears no one is on Zoom. Those in support on the phone line, please.
If you would like to testify in support on AB 196, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 229, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and Committee. Jamie Rodriguez, that's JamieRodriguez. I'm the Government Affairs Manager for Washoe County. We are here in support of the bill. We were in support of it in the Policy Committee as well. As the Majority Leader mentioned, we do potentially have one courthouse in Washoe County. That would be the Incline Justice Court, for which a lactation pod or something may need to be made available. The rest of the courts in Washoe County would be in compliance with the legislation. So just want to thank her for the appropriation to help offset some of those costs, and hope that we're able to move this forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next person in support on the phone line, please.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 018. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller 018, please press star 6 to unmute. Caller 018, please press star 6 to unmute.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Richards. I'm a lawyer, I'm a mom, and I live in Assembly District 27. It's spelled JenniferRichards. Thank you, Madam Chair and Majority Leader Benita Thompson, for working with me to bring this bill forward. I know this isn't a policy committee, So I'll just state briefly that the health benefits for mom and baby to breastfeed are numerous, and providing reasonable accommodations for women to continue this will have immense cost savings. Oh, sorry about that. It's a modest accommodation, and we hope that you will approve the funding so that courthouses can provide a space for all women that need to attend the courthouses and have business there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next person in support.
Chair, there are no more callers in the queue at this time for support.
Thank you very much, Broadcast Services. Anyone in opposition in the room? Seeing none. Anyone in opposition on the phone line, please?
If you would like to testify in opposition to AB 196, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone in neutral in the room? Not seeing anyone come forward. Anyone neutral on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in neutral on AB 196, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller 978, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Carlton, members of the committee, Joanna Jacob, on behalf of Clark County, that's JOANNA-JACOB. We are neutral on this bill. Madam Chair, the majority leader has worked with Clark County and all the local governments on giving us the flexibility to implement this bill. We do have in Clark County about 8 outlying justice courts outside of the Las Vegas Valley, including in locations such as Bunkerville and Searchlight, Good Springs, Moapa Valley, that I think that we will work to repurpose a room or placing a pod. We may have the need to install pods, as the majority leader stated, but certainly the language in the amendment that she offered today in the committee is also going to help Clark County because we do share space with other courts. So this will allow us some flexibility also. We just got to figure out the logistics. And I would just like to say, because this might be the last time I get to testify on one of the majority leader's bills, I really do appreciate the work that she put in on to work with local government on this bill, and I just want to express my sincere thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jacobs. Anyone else in neutral?
Caller with the last 3 digits, 863. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Carlton and members of the committee. Dagny Stapleton on behalf of NACO, Nevada Association of Counties. Want to thank we are neutral on the bill. Want to thank the majority leader for reaching out to us early on this bill and working with us. Thank her for the flexibility that is written into the bill, as well as the funding included to carry out the policy of ensuring that there are lactation rooms for nursing mothers in our courts. We also want to thank her for the conceptual amendment proposed today, adding district courts to Section 1.5 so that they can access the funding as well. Thanks again to the majority leader, and I'd echo the comments of Clark and Washoe counties. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next in neutral.
Chair Carlton, there are no more callers in neutral.
Thank you very much. I'll invite the majority leader back for any closing comments, and she's going to take a pass. All righty. With that, committee members, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 196. We do need to work session a couple of bills so that we can keep things rolling, especially those that are going to need to have amendments drafted. So I'd like to get those out of our way this morning so that legal will not start working on amendments until we actually process the bill. So with that, give me a second to coordinate with Ms. Kaufman, and then I'll give you the list of where we're going to go. So committee members, we're pulling them all together, and then I'll give you an idea which ones we'll be processing. We're focusing on amendments mostly, as I said earlier, to make sure that we have time to get them amended. Just want to make sure staff has everything in front of them as we start moving forward, because we know how fast this rolls. And then we'll go through the list of what we're going to do. Okay. So, in coordination with Ms. Kaufman, we will be Did somebody get the speaker wound up? So with that, committee members, if we could go ahead and come back, that would be great. Everybody needs a moment. So that moment is over. So with that, guys, it's going to be a long week. We've got to smile every once in a while, right? So with that, committee members, it would be my my intention to move 484, the Dieter bill that was heard in joint full yesterday. It would be my intention to move the midwives bill, number 387, with the amendment we heard on Saturday. It would be my intention to move 341, the cannabis bill, with the amendment that we heard Saturday. It would be my intention to move 482, the bad debt bill, which we heard about a week or so ago, and some work was done on it to be able to address those business licenses. There is an amendment that changes that, so I think we've addressed the issues on that. And then the grants, that was 482, I apologize. And then the grants bill, 445. And then also the bill we heard this morning, 487. Assembly Bill 196, just presented by the Majority Leader. And Assembly Bill 220. I believe we can go ahead and move and keep things headed down to the desk so that we don't get a backlog later on in case something jumps the tracks. So, did you need me to repeat that one more time? Is everybody good? I'll do it again just for the public. Assembly Bill 484, Assembly Bill 387, Assembly Bill 341, Assembly Bill 482, Assembly Bill 445, Assembly Bill 487, Assembly Bill 196, and Assembly Bill 220. I know they're a bit out of order, but that's how they're listed on my sheet. So with that, we can go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Kaufman and proceed. Ms. Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 484 authorizes $54 million to upgrade the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation's unemployment compensation information system.
Thank you very much. This was heard in joint full yesterday. Any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 484? Not seeing any questions or comments. There were no proposed amendments. This would be a due pass. I have a motion from Vice Chair Monroe Moreno, a second from Dr. Titus. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, passes unanimously of all the members present. I believe the next bill that we would like to address, it was 387.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 387 establishes the Board of Licensed Certified Professional Midwives and requiring the board to adopt certain regulations. The bill requires the Division of Public and Behavioral Health to perform certain tasks relating to regulations of licensed certified professional midwives and provides licensure of professional midwives. The bill also authorizes the licensing of midwives to utilize a certified professional midwife, birth assistance, and prescribes the requirements relating to the practices certified of midwife. I'm going to screw that one.
Midwifery.
With regard to the fiscal impact, as amended, the Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Public and Behavioral Health indicated that the fiscal note was addressed. Madam Chair, I would note there was a fiscal note that was provided by Medicaid, the Division of Healthcare Finance and Policy, that did identify that it would have a savings in the Medicaid account. However, this account would also have expenditures that would be incurred of $52,000 in their admin account, and so the committee may wish to provide that transfer authority to the admin account in order to provide for those administrative costs.
Thank you very much. So committee members, are there any questions on AB 387 at this time? Not seeing any questions, I believe the motion would include that transfer authority. We want to give the agency as much authority that they need to be able to accomplish this. So this bill was amended in the policy committee, and this is another amendment in our committee. So the motion on this would be amend and do pass as amended. With the transfer authority, I'll take the motion from Ms. Benitez Thompson, the second from Ms. Howdigy. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those in opposition? Dr. Titus is an A, Mr. Hafen is an A, Mr. Levitt is an A. Motion passes. I'll go ahead and, I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Roberts, you gotta get that arm out there. And Mr. Roberts is an A also. So with that, the motion still passes. And as it gets to the floor, we'll ask Ms. Monroe Moreno to handle the bill. You're welcome. And the next bill for consideration is AB 341. All right, I think we're moving ahead. So, Ms. Kaufman, AB 341.
I apologize for the delay, Madam Chair. The bill provides, Assembly Bill 341 provides for the licensure and regulation of the Cannabis Compliance Board of the Cannabis Consumption Lounges. The bill sets forth requirements for the licensure and operations of cannabis consumption lounges. The board is required to adopt regulations establishing requirements for the preparation and sale of ready-to-consume cannabis products. This bill applies excise tax related sales dollars of the cannabis and cannabis products by a cannabis consumption lounge, and lastly provides, as amended, to allow for consumption of cannabis and cannabis products in public places or in cannabis establishments for the purposes of authorizing a person to engage in such activities in the cannabis lounge. I would note that there is an amendment to the bill. And
I believe that was the proposed amendment during Saturday's hearing.
that is correct, Madam Chair. And with the amendment, the Department of Taxation has provided that there is no fiscal impact. The Attorney General's office indicated that it would be able to meet the fiscal impacts of their note related with their AG cap. And so I believe all of the fiscal notes on this have been addressed.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kaufman. I'll open up for questions from the committee. This was our Saturday hearing. Chairman Yeager presented the bill with the amendment. I believe the bill had been amended in the policy committee also. We were working from the first reprint, if I remember correctly.
Madam Chair, there was a proposed amendment that related to reducing the number of lounges. I believe it limited it to a total of 40 lounges, of which I believe 20 were independent and 20 were related to existing established dispensaries.
And with that, Chair Yeager, we usually don't do this, but I want to make sure we get the right motion. Please come to the table for just a couple quick questions. This bill was previously amended in the policy committee, so we were working from the first reprint, correct?
Steve Yeager for the record. Correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I just want to make sure we accept the correct motion. So with that, committee members, if there's no other questions or comments, the motion on this bill would be an amend and do pass as amended. I have a motion from Ms. Hodeggy, a second from Ms. Benitez-Thompson. Any questions or comments on the motion? Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll be a yes to get it out of committee. I still have a couple of questions that I need to work out before the floor vote. If I change my mind, I'll certainly let you know. Thank you.
The chair would definitely appreciate that, especially at this time of the session. So with that, seeing no other questions or comments, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? I have Dr. Titus in opposition, Mr. Hafen, Ms. Tolles, Mr. Levitt, all in opposition. Thank you all very much. Mr. Roberts, if you get that information, you might want to share it with them. Okay? Thank you very much. So with that, we can move on to Assembly Bill 482. I believe staff has an amendment that they need to pass out on Assembly Bill 482 to the committee members, please. That's okay. Well, we're just gonna, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, it's already on the desk. Thank you. I apologize. So with that, Ms. Kaufman, Assembly Bill 482.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 482 prohibits the Secretary of State from renewing a state business license of the state controller if the state controller has notified the Secretary of State that a person who holds a state business license owes a debt to the state agency that has been assigned to the state controller for collection, and the person has not satisfied the debt, entered into agreement with the state controller for payment of debt, or demonstrated to the state controller that the debt is not valid. And as the chair had indicated, there is an amendment on this bill.
Could you give me a copy of the amendment? Because I'm missing mine. Okay. So, thank you. So the amendment changes it from not renew to suspend, and instead of applicant, the license holder, and adds language that the Secretary of State shall reinstate a business license that has been suspended if the Secretary of State receives a letter issued by the state comptroller stating that the person whose state business license was suspended has satisfied the debt, entered into an agreement for repayment, or the debt is not valid. The concerns that the committee shared and working with DIR and the Secretary of State was to make sure that everyone had every opportunity to be able to pay the debt, be aware of the debt, and to clear the debt before their license. It will not be not renewed. The correct term would be to suspend the license. So that is the proposed amendment, and that was proposed by the Secretary of State to address the issues that were brought up in the committee that day. Any questions at this time? Dr. Titus.
Thank you. Actually, I have a comment before my vote, but I can wait till then, or I can
Okay,
do it
that's
now.
fine.
Thank you.
We can do that. That's fine. So with that, committee members, are there any other questions or comments? We sent them off to go get the work done, and thank goodness they did it without me. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this spot right now. So, any questions? Seeing none? With that, I would accept a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 482. From Ms. Monroe Moreno, second from Ms. Bedinas Thompson. Comments on the motion, Dr. Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have frequently heard in this committee different bills that encourage people to keep working. For example, we changed the laws regarding traffic tickets because we didn't want folks losing their ability to go to work if they lost their cars or went to jail. This bill suspends a license that how are we going to ask folks to pay these fees when they no longer have the business to do so. So unfortunately, although I feel that the amendment makes it a little bit better, I still cannot support removing a person's opportunity to pay bills. So I'll be a no on this bill. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Titus. These are debts that are owed the state through the Department of Industrial Relations. They're made very well aware of what their debt is, and the DIR board is expunging these debts. And the goal behind the bill was to make sure that people paid the debts that they owed the state, and this is an accountability measure. It was never meant to put anyone out of work. It is meant to give people the opportunity to rectify the debt that they hold to the state rather than have it expunged from the state books. We expect everyone to pay their fines and fees to the state. So with that, Mr. Hafen, did you have a comment?
Yes, Madam Chair. I just wanted to put on the record that I will be voting yes out of committee, and if I do change my mind, I will be sure to let you know based on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, there is a motion before the committee. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those in opposition? Dr. Titus, Ms. Tolles are in opposition. Going on to Assembly Bill 445. We've gone past that point. We'll take care of them on the floor. We're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 445 extends an existing grant matching pilot program, creates the grant matching fund with a $1 million transfer from the unclaimed property that currently goes to the general fund, and moves the Office of Grant Procurement from the Department of Administration to the Governor's Office. The bill expands the membership of the Nevada Advisory Council on Federal Assistance to include 2 members appointed by the Speaker of the Assembly and the Majority Leader of the Senate who represent nonprofit organizations, a local agency, or a tribal government, the State Treasurer, and the Controller. With respect to the fiscal impact, the Department of Administration's Grant Procurement Division did indicate that they had a slight revision to their fiscal note, and they would require a total of $1,279,979, of which $1 million would be from the unclaimed properties account, and $2,091,010 in fiscal year 2023, also with $1 million from the unclaimed property account. And the Controller's Office submitted a fiscal note originally provided for $150,000. However, in discussions with the Controller's Office, they had indicated that a Management Analyst 3 position would be appropriate in order to address the workload increases associated with this bill, and that would require an additional $89,537 in fiscal year 2022 and $115,772 in fiscal year 2023.
Right, thank you very much. So with that, committee members, are there any questions? We would incorporate the appropriate appropriations into the bill. Try to say that one fast 3 times. So are there any questions on the bill? Ms. Monroe Moreno, any statement? No? Thank you. With that, and this bill had currently been amended in the policy committee, so this would be an amend and do pass as amended with the appropriate appropriations attached to the bill, the policy amendment, correct?
Yes, there was also the other
And there's the other amendment that dealt with the unclassified pay. So the amendment that was discussed Saturday, and then the amendment, and then encapsulated in that amendment would be the appropriate appropriations. So with that, the chair would accept a motion to amend and do pass as amended from Ms. Howdigy. Second from Ms. Benitez Thompson. Questions or comments on the motion? Dr. Titus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a bill that actually makes good fiscal sense, and I feel that we can actually generate more funds back into Nevada, and am highly supportive of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, passes unanimously of the members present. And with that, we can go to Assembly Bill 487, heard this morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 487 suspends certain required transfers from the State General Fund to the account to stabilize the operations of state government through the 2021-23 biennium.
Are there any questions or comments from committee members on the bill that we heard at 8 o'clock this morning? Seeing none, with that, I believe this would be a do pass. I would accept a motion to do pass from Ms. Benitez Thompson, second from Ms. Monroe Moreno. Any questions or comments on the motion? Dr. Titus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Contrary to my prior statement, I do not think this bill makes good fiscal sense. I've seen no need in our budget hearings to have this rainy day fund swept, and I will be a no on this motion. Thank you.
And unfortunately, we are put in a position, if we want to fund government and get the things done that we believe government is responsible for, that this is not something that I take lightly. I had hoped I would never have to do this again in my career, but unfortunately, we've all been put in a position where we have a responsibility to do the right thing to the state. So that is why the bill is here right now. So, any other questions or comments from the committee members? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Dr. Titus, Mr. Hafen, Ms. Tolles, Mr. Levitt, Mr. Roberts are all in opposition. Motion carries. Moving on to Assembly Bill 196.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 196, as amended, requires courthouses to contain lactate rooms under certain circumstances for the use by members of the public to express breast milk, and to make a general fund appropriation to the Interim Finance Committee of $500,000 for the allocation as grants to municipal and justice courts for the cost of creating lactation rooms, contingent upon matching money being provided by the courts applying such grants for sources other than appropriations. I would note there was an amendment that was discussed this morning that reduces the appropriation from $500,000 to $50,000. It also provides that Section 1.1 would be revised instead of each courthouse to require at least one lactation room per location when municipal courts are housed in the same building and campuses. I would also point out that there was a fiscal note from the Administrative Office of the Courts of $20,000, but it appears the amendment would address that fiscal impact.
With that, committee members, we heard this bill just a few moments ago. So are there any questions or comments on the bill at this time? Not seeing any, I would accept a motion to amend. Was this a first reprint? So I would accept a motion to amend and do pass as amended from Ms. Monroe Moreno, second from Ms. Tolles. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing none, passes unanimously of the members present. I believe the next bill under consideration is Assembly Bill 220.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 220, as amended, requires each law enforcement agency to adopt a written policy establishing standards of conduct for the use of a mobile device issued by law enforcement agencies to any peace officer employed by the agency and establish specific requirements relating to that policy. I would note that both the Department of Corrections as well as Las Vegas Metro have removed their fiscal impact.
Okay, with that, committee members, are there any questions or comments on Assembly Bill 220? Not seeing any, this would be a do pass. A do pass as amended. I'll accept a motion from Ms. Bedinas Thompson, a second from Ms. Monroe Moreno. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, passes unanimously of the members present. Okay, committee members, keep in mind that as we send things out, when the amendments appear, things will be rolling straight into general files, so things will be moving quickly. So just be prepared for that. If it's your bill, you should be getting the floor statement. If not, they'll all come to me. All floor statements will come to me, and then we can deal with them at the appropriate time because it's moving so quickly. I just want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to move forward. With that, we are going to go into recess. Floor is scheduled 10 minutes from now. Not bad timing. And we are going to try to get back into this room as soon as possible after legislative operations, I believe, if not maybe a few minutes earlier, depending upon what the schedule looks like. We do have a couple of members that sit on both, but there's a couple of bills that we could just have the hearings on and move forward. We'll do our best to coordinate to get everyone back in the room. So don't leave the building, all right? Okay? So with that, we are in recess.
Tell Wade